office. So I just wanted to do a couple of announcements while we're waiting for a few more people to get on. And that is that our club vote is going on now for voting. And so you can go out to our competition website, whether you competed or not, and vote for your favorite photos. We have quite a few new novice people that competed. And we had, and we have a lot, because we have 8 new scholarship recipients. So a lot of them came in right away and started competing. So you can hop out and vote for them. Our next workshop is going to be on Tuesday, March 2nd. It will be a different link to get on. It's put on by the top Photographic Society of America judge, Haida Stover. And Haida is in charge of all the PSA judges we've been having, and she's offering a workshop on how they train international judges. So we're only getting, you know, an hour's worth of weekend course that they learned, but she's going to use photos that our members send in, and then you participate. So if you want to send in a photo, she's going to work with 6 to 8 photos. So let's just say she was using the photo that's behind me. She might talk about the different problems of it, or how the highlights are off, and how you might tell someone about that, and how the lines, whether that's pleasing or not pleasing, and kind of go through how a judge makes a decision about scoring, and then how a judge makes a decision about critiquing. So that is kind of a bonus workshop that we're doing that's separate from what Kris is offering, and that's Tuesday, March 2nd. And then I have a workshop coming up in April or May taught by a 19-year-old kid, and I'm calling a 19-year-old a kid, but a young man.
No, that's kid.
Yeah, it's a child, infant. There's an infant out of South Carolina. This guy shoots birds like nobody. We're going to take his introductory to bird photography. He has a whole series of bird photography courses. We're going to start with his introductory one. Hunt's Photo is underwriting that for us. So that should be a really wonderful one. And then Hunt's has also offered to write another young photographer, an 18-year-old, and his course. So that will be later this summer.
What's the 18-year-old? Do you know what he's doing?
I do, but I don't remember right now. It's not woodlands, how to photograph in the woodlands. So I thought that was very useful for us with all the acres property in the area and the Eagle Marsh, you know, because Indiana is woodlands. So it's not a, you know, it's an easy one we all can do, just like the bird photography, we can all photograph some birds. You know, it's not like how to photograph Bryce Canyon or something that's
Sure.
out of reach for a lot of us.
That series that's starting in April or May with the bird photography, do we know how many?
We're gonna just do one, and we're just all gonna see whether we like it or not, and you know, and whether it's enjoyable. And I'm not sure how many Hunts will write for us, and so I thought I'd go with more of a variety as opposed to we do a whole series of birds. But we can just see. I'm just playing it by ear and seeing what people think.
We have, I mean, we don't have a huge number of people in the club, but of the number we have a decent amount of people who really like bird photography.
Right. I just don't want like all our outside speakers to be one topic that alienates, you know, Deb is food photography. So, you know, try to get something that would interest, you know, be indoors that would interest, you know, would be something Deb would be interested in, or, so that's, and then Kris, do you have another event? You probably have not had time or anything to think about what your next workshop is.
The ideas that I had put out were portraits in general, and trying to do a self-portrait, and then
Oh, yeah, the self-portrait we have to do because we have a
Yeah.
competition coming up on that.
So
Yes, so that'd be awesome.
Actually, that has to be the next one, right? Because we had talked about that. It does have to be the
Yes.
next one.
Yeah.
I'd like for everybody to look at the format of a little bit of the format that I'm using tonight, and let me know what you think. The idea is for it to be more interactive and a little bit more engaging to keep their attention, because I know we all have so many things going on right now and responsibilities extra with everything going on with kids at home and weather and everything else. So
Kris, do you have your date for March? You're doing the 3rd.
it's on the 16th as well. We had talked about that in the last board meeting. So
Is that the 3rd?
that was what we had, that was what we had decided for the next one. So self-portraits on the 16th.
April 16th. Okay.
Which we'll talk a little bit about, just portraits in general, but also March 16th is the next
March
one.
16th.
Oh, thank you. March 16th.
You're welcome.
Portraits and how to do a self-portrait.
Yep.
And how to do it
That'll be fun.
without soft boxes and what have you.
Yeah, we're going to focus on good window light or diffuse light.
Snow light.
Keep it simple. Yes. Bounce light from snow. Okay, well, is that everything that we need for announcements before we get rolling here?
That is. I'll look forward to getting the recording, and I will see you later. Thank you so much, Kris.
Happy birthday to your husband.
Hi, Brenda.
Thanks. Bye. Feel lots better,
Brenda.
Kris. Bye-bye. Bye.
Okay. I'll just kind of keep an eye on if anybody is jumping in with us here. And so if I stop in the middle of things, occasionally I'm still a little short of breath with things, but we'll get there. Okay, let me make sure we're still recording here. Yep, still recording. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go into present mode so these slides are larger, and then I'm pulling over some full-size examples from another computer. Let me move my mic over where I can see that. Okay, so here we go. All right, so macro photography. Oh, I can hear somebody's got a lot of... It's Bernadette, maybe? I see your mic going. Oh, she just muted. Thank you. I could see her mic going up and down where there was background noise. Okay, so macro photography 101. There's a lot of info in here. And so you guys can see my screen and you can see a small rectangle video of me, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right,
Yep.
so I have a bunch of stuff over to the side here that I can bring in front of the camera and show. You'll be able to tell with the slide presentation that the teacher in me. So we're just gonna whip through some things, and then we get toward the end, we'll talk about gear, and we can go back and discuss any of the topics. And if at any point you have questions, go ahead and stop me. It's okay. All right, so we're going to keep going on like you need me to read slides to you, but macro photography, concerned with close-up views. It can be flowers, insects, textures, leaves, bugs, jewelry, all kinds of stuff. Anything can be photographed at a macro level, so all the techniques we talk about tonight you can apply to any subject. So I'm going to show lots of pictures, but any of the techniques you can apply to any subject. Some people even do abstracts, and I'm going to show some examples, of abstracts with macro, which are very interesting. Actually, it sounds a little weird, but wait till you see some examples. It's kind of fun. Water droplets, those are really cool. And then insects and bugs are so not my thing, but the pictures, for for people that are into it are really cool. So we're going to talk about that. That's known as extreme macro. And so we're going to talk about why it's called that and exactly how those classifications work. More than just close-up rose photos. It's very stereotypical. We're just going to get that out of the way and move on. That was my idea of a joke. Okay, genres or subjects within macro. I'm going to turn on my little laser here. So these are all examples. These are not my photos. You won't see photos of mine till the very end. These are all photos that are from all over the internet, and typically that's a no-no, but I'm not being paid, so this is editorial use. So this is a wood texture. This is the underside of a mushroom. Isn't that interesting? Leaves, keys, this is frost on a window, pine cones. Some of these are more obvious. Some food in there for Deb, gotta have that. Water droplets, we're gonna talk about water droplets and exactly how all that works and some tips to get those water droplets to stay on your item. These are soap bubbles, or you can do oil and water and then put different colored lights underneath it. Or if you have like a little inexpensive video light, or you have multicolored paper and then you just shine a light on the paper and that's underneath like a glass plate of oil with some soap bubbles in it, water with soap bubbles or some oil with some bubbles in it. It's really cool. I love macro photography that's kind of cheesy funny. So I love this image down here of the bug that looks like he's reading the newspaper. I just think that's hilarious. He's got a little drink. So you can do all kinds of things. You can do textures and abstracts, tiny little still lifes. So it's not just flowers and bugs. So we've got, oh, Basil's coming in. Okay, so moving on. We've got, give him a second to get on, connecting to audio. Hopefully he's in there. So all these different kinds of macro. We're going to go ahead and go to the next slide. I collect quotes, so moving on. Examples of macro photography. If you've never tried macro, this is a good way to just see a huge variety, to see what's possible. So again, it can be more than flowers and bugs, and we're going to have a couple more slides to show some things with that. It doesn't have to be a flower that's out in a park, kind of in nature growing. You can buy flowers at wholesale florist is over on Hillegas and Ardmore. You know that road that changes names like 4 or 5 times, runs north-south. So it's Huguenard and then Hillegas and then Ardmore, and then it goes out by the airport. So just south of West Coliseum, there's a couple of truck stops and like truck repair places out there, and it West Coliseum runs right into Hillegas. So it's just south of there on the east side of the road. There's a wholesale florist or your local grocery store. You can pick up some flowers and bring them home and play around with some of these different techniques in a controlled environment, which is kind of nice for the winter time that we're dealing with right now. Bugs, oh my goodness, not my thing. Butterflies, maybe. Spider webs, but it makes for a beautiful photo. This is a dandelion. This level of close-up with a bug is more of the extreme macro that we're going to talk about. So we'll get to that in a second. Moving on, another quote. These are abstracts. This one in the middle is eyeshadow. So that's like the women's makeup, eye makeup, the pressed texture, just really close up on eyeshadow, which I found really interesting. This is a close-up of a flower with such soft focus, shallow depth of field, that it just almost becomes a blur or a wash of colors, which is, I think, is really beautiful. I love this one too. I like the lines and the soft swirls of color. Not everything has to be razor sharp in focus. So I think that's pretty cool. Cracked paint, it's interesting, the lines and the texture and the fall off of the depth of field there. This is the front of a speaker grill on like a loudspeaker. I'm gonna save the middle one for here in a second, because that's the most interesting one. This one down in the bottom left is paper. So it's paper that stood up on end like the pages of a book, and you're looking down on it and it's kind of sitting open. And so you can do colored paper or even white paper and project a color on it with an RGB light or a flash that has a gel over it, which is really interesting. The next one is like a grill on a car, and it has other small cars reflected in it, and it's just kind of wavy lines. Rust, soap bubble, or soap that's swished around in a dish. It has kind of swirly rainbow colors. This middle one is crazy. That is like a microscopic close-up of the wings of a butterfly, which it just blew my mind. That image is just amazing, I thought. Evidently, this is a thing with macro, that people have little action figures, and specifically Lego minifigs, they're called, that they make their minifigs have adventures, which I thought was great. You guys don't have to mute yourself. You can chime in if you want, but I just got the biggest kick out of this, that, you know, this little guy is riding on a leaf and going on adventures. Some of the other things, if you're into collecting coins, if you're into watches, some people have a watch collection. Some men are really into that sort of thing. Hot Wheels evidently has a whole genre of macro photography, like the minifig Lego people. People have Hot Wheels and they make tiny little miniature setups for them to make it look like a real full-size car. I saw a ton of Hot Wheels photos looking up all this stuff, so that was kind of interesting. One thing that I would think we would want to try, if you've never really been into macro photography and you just want to dip your toe in the water a little bit, would be to find whatever you're into and see how can I photograph that really close up. So like for me, musical instruments, and photographing very small details on musical instruments. And then I love fountain pens. So maybe some close-up photos of fountain pens would be cool. So I was trying to make my piece with looking at all those pictures of spiders. So I looked up a quote about insects and insects being interesting subjects. And so you guys will have access to a PDF of this whole presentation later, so we can move past the quotes, but I thought that some of these were cute. All right, everyday objects. You know, sometimes, I don't know about everybody else, but I get a little stumped looking for a new subject for a kind of photography, trying a different kind of photography. And so I looked up just all these different things, household things that you could take photos of. And everything from the leather and the laces of an old boot to crayons and drawing pencils. There's fountain pen. Again, these are not my images, editorial use, commenting on them. But it's interesting to see things that close up and to see those details so rich and so clearly. All the food stuff for our lovely Deb Saleh, who does food photography.
Thank you.
I really made an effort to get in there with the food photography and look up examples. These are grapes, and I just thought this was the cutest thing ever. But as a mom, they're on skewers, and a kid who finds this attractive and fun is probably too young to be trusted with a wooden skewer. But that's just the mom in me. go through another quote here. I apologize if I'm going too fast through those. So, and we're going to get to the gear here real quick. I'm trying to whip through some of these other ones. One of the things that kind of fascinated me as I went through and was looking for content for this workshop was I kept seeing photos of dragonflies with all the insect stuff that I was looking up. And so I looked up some facts about dragonflies, and they never really got my attention before. But once I looked up a couple of facts about them, dragonflies are really cool. So I think I would be more apt to, that might get me over my not liking the creepy crawly little insects. I do love bees. They make me swell up, not quite like dangerous anaphylactic or anything, but I get pretty swollen if I get stung by a bee. So, but I love bees, and I'm very interested in facts about honeybees and enjoy photographing them. But butterflies and dragonflies, maybe. After learning a little bit about them, they're much more interesting to me. So, so that's something that you could use with macro photography, that if you take a picture of an insect and you want to identify it, or even flowers, I don't always know the real names of flowers. I just know I like the yellow one that's shaped like that. So I'm hoping to start to pay more attention to the little labels out at Foster Park or the Botanical Conservatory and try to learn the actual name and look up something about it, especially because we have, you know, an internet connected phone or tablet right in our hands all the time. You can stop and look it up pretty much anywhere you are, which is pretty cool. So this is the thing about the dragonfly that got my attention. They're kind of like super helicopter, stop on a dime, back up, move around. And I didn't know that they were carnivores. So dragonflies are a lot cooler than I realized. So now I think I'll be much more on the lookout for them. All right, depth of field. Starting to get into some technical stuff. So basic points. Macro can be, you can use macro techniques to take pictures of anything. And extreme macro, we're going to talk about that. That's the super duper close-up bug stuff. We'll get to that in a second. So depth of field. Depth of field is dependent upon 3 factors: the aperture value you choose, the focal length of the lens, and the subject distance. So how far you are from the subject. So if you get in really, really close, that actually changes things. The closer you get, the harder it is to achieve really good deep depth of field where a lot is in focus. We have a couple of newbies with us. Does that make sense, Danielle?
Yep.
Okay. Just got a little yep. Okay, so subject to camera distance makes a difference in that. So the higher the magnification ratio, the smaller the depth of field. So think of it as everything is magnified. Everything is much less and much more. It's just everything is on a grander scale. The more you zoom in and you get in really, really close, the more you really have to work at it to get a deep depth of field. So, and I'll show you some example photos here in a second with that. The closer you get to your subject, the more magnified all your changes to aperture become. When you get in really, really close, you're working with a sliver. It could be a couple of millimeters even. It's kind of crazy. So when you first start out with macro, maybe you just try kind of close. And then you just work the same subject and try to get in closer and closer until you realize this is the closest this particular lens can get. That's a good way to start. It's not uncommon to achieve a decent depth of field. You know, you might think, oh, I've got an 85 1.8 lens. That's a really common middle of the road lens. It's not super cheap, but it's not crazy expensive, but it's a good prime. or you have a 50 millimeter 1.8 or 1.4. And so you like to shoot things with shallow depth of field, and you like that look, especially if you're just learning and you're just exploring what shallow depth of field looks like, and it's really cool because it's way different from what you can get with a cell phone or any other inexpensive type of camera. So I'm thinking of Danielle, but anyone else that watches this that's just now learning shallow depth of field. So even with a lens that's 2.8, the aperture only opens to 2.8. That's still going to be super shallow depth of field. And the closer you get to that subject, the shallower that depth of field is going to be even at 2.8. So you may have to change it to f8, f11, f16 to really get the whole thing in focus, depending on how big that item is or how much of it you need to show. You can even do focus stacking. We can discuss that later, where it's like you take a picture and you do a slice that's in focus and another slice a little farther forward and another slice a little farther forward and another one. And you might do anywhere from 10 to 50. And then you use software to collapse all those and just show all the things that are in focus. And so that's a way to keep your depth of field, shallow depth of field all around the edges, but make sure the actual item is completely in focus. And then focal plane alignment, image plane alignment are all really important to achieve your desired results. I'm going to show you some examples of that, about how if you're tilted or the item is tilted, it changes things, okay? So let's look at this particular photo. This photo, or this flower, was maybe 3 inches tall. And notice that the side here and the side over here, out of focus. So the closer you get into something, again, just the very front of it is in focus. So this was, and it was kind of a tall, skinny flower. So this might have been the front 3/4 of an inch, going back from the front edge to about 3/4 of an inch back on the flower. It was like maybe 2 inches. It was really tall and skinny, maybe 2.5 inches thick, and about 3, maybe 4 inches tall. So this would be shallow depth of field. I didn't look to see what the exact settings on this image were, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was like f8 because I was that close, which is weird, right? You would think, oh, that looks like it's 2.8. No. Macro is way different. So a couple of different focusing techniques before we get into some more involved things. Autofocus. If you have an autofocus macro lens, it's important to know your minimum focus distance. And I'm going to show you, we're going to talk about an app that will help you do that. You can also look in the paperwork that came with your lens, or you can just Google it and just make sure you type the name, brand of your lens, if it's a prime or if it's a zoom. And then if you have any letters on your lens to tell which exact version of that lens it is, it's important to type all of that in, because like my daughter had a Sigma 75 to 300 cheap lens that she used to be like her knockabout camera kit, and brand new it was like 200 and something, used it was like 125, 150. But there were multiple versions of that lens, and each one of them had different capabilities. So it's important to type all those little things in to make sure you know you're looking up specs on the exact lens that you have. Manual focus, try to get the item in focus, and then rock very slightly back and forth. And we're talking just think of the tip of your nose just barely moving. That's how much it's going to change in and out of focus. So you have to learn to rock back and forth very, very tiny amounts with minuscule movements. And you may need to steady your feet or hold your breath. If you're sitting, sometimes I'm out at Foster Park and I'm sitting cross-legged, and I'll bend down and I brace my hands on my knees holding the camera, and that helps. Focus peaking, we'll talk about that as we go through even more. Focus peaking is where you can make your camera turn on a red or yellow, blue or white highlight and show exactly where is in focus when you're manually focusing, which is really cool. We'll see an example of what that looks like on the back of a camera screen in a little bit here. DSLR users, you can use mirror lockup. Anybody in here ever use mirror lockup? So this is for an actual DSLR. Danielle, you have a DSLR with your 70D, and then you also have a mirrorless with your EOS R. That's the actual mirror that's down in your camera. It locks it up and out of the way before it takes the photo. So it pauses. It gives time for that vibration to stop from the mirror moving. Just a micro vibration. It gives it time to settle down and stop before it takes the photo. And it makes for a clearer, sharper image. And it's usually buried somewhere in your menu. So get that manual out or search YouTube for some tips on how to do that. Can't get close enough. We're going to show extension tubes, a tripod or a shutter release. I brought some stuff to show. Shutter release cable. You have to get one that plugs into your specific, there we go, your specific camera. This is the end for my particular camera, but the connection for your camera might look different. And then this one, show it in the light. There we go. It has a button. And if I want to hold it down to do a long image or like a bulb setting, to leave it open for longer than 30 seconds, it has a lock where I can lock it open. But that would be really low light. But this is nice because it keeps your hand hitting the shutter button from introducing vibration and making your photo not sharp. You can also use the self-timer function and hit the shutter, and then it'll wait either 2 or 10 seconds or something and take the photo. Okay, and a tripod. Good tripod's always handy to have, because sometimes you have to do like f16, f22, f32 if your lens has it, right, to get the whole thing in focus. And so that changes drastically all your other settings, what shutter speed you have to use to get a proper exposure, what ISO you have to use to get a proper exposure. So a tripod is so handy. Taking a tripod out and dragging it around the park, taking pictures of photos or taking pictures of flowers is not always the most fun thing to do. So I tend to sit cross-legged or lay down on the ground and get dirty. Focusing rail, we'll talk about a focusing rail too. This is what focus peaking looks like. Does anybody here have focus peaking on their camera, or you've used it? I use focus peaking when I use manual focus. Anybody else?
Yes.
Ron, okay, what camera do you shoot with, Ron?
I have a Sony Alpha 66.
Okay.
So it's semi-mirrorless. It's got a mirror, but it's semi-transparent, so some of the light goes up to the metering system and the rest goes through directly to the center, to the sensor.
Okay. Now, I'm familiar with, I think I know a guy in town that had like an Alpha, an A7. Is that
Yes,
that same
that's a
series?
full-frame version of
Okay.
the camera.
Oh, A66, like A6600?
No, it's just Alpha 66. It's the smaller sensor.
Okay. I'm not as familiar with Sony model numbers,
Yeah.
but cool. Okay, so focus peaking. You can change it from red to a different color, which is really handy if you're taking pictures of green foliage. That red color is my favorite because I like to take pictures outdoors. But if it's a red flower, I change it to like yellow or blue, which is in the menu. But being able to change it to different colors is really handy. And I really love focus peaking. Incidentally, if you have focus peaking on your camera, it works with manual lenses as well. And I love me some vintage lenses. Love them. We'll talk about some thrifty options as we we go through here. You don't have to buy a bunch of stuff to do macro. Not at all. So angle matters. This is an example of how when you're trying to use really shallow depth of field, this was shot at f2, and I'm going to just bring up from my computer on the other screen here. I'm going to bring up a larger version of these so you can see them a little bit better. But the left one is facing straight on to this image, to this object. So I can see the whole front of it pretty much in focus. And then here, when I'm looking down on it, it's just a sliver. So think of, when you're using shallow depth of field, think of how deep your slice of focus is. This is a good way to explain it for beginners. So my slice of focus goes all the way down the front of this, straight up and down. But because I'm completely square to the object, my camera, the sensor is flat and at the same angle as the flatness of that object. So they're parallel, right? So what's behind that edge, like right behind that edge, is out of focus on both sides. But the front of it, the actual front of it, here's my camera and the sensor, here's the front of the object. I can get it in focus. Now, whichever hand, whatever's behind that object, like immediately behind the corner, out of focus. But the front of it, in focus. Now, as soon as there's the object and I'm looking down at it, camera and the little 8mm video camera, or you know what I mean. So camera is pointing down at it. That sliver of focus is just one little level of it. So you can use this to your advantage. So if you're having trouble getting a whole flower in focus, change the angle of view. Like if it's the evening and you don't have very much light, and you don't have a tripod with you, and you don't want to do f16 because you don't want to have to go real high on your ISO and you don't want to have to go real slow on your shutter speed, then change your angle and look more flat down at the top of the photo or from the side. Whatever view you want of it, go for something flat that you can photograph, and it makes it a little bit easier to get the whole thing in focus. Or you can exploit it the other way and say, I don't want the whole thing in focus. I want to go back to, let's go back to one of these, this image. Like I want it blurry on purpose. I want it out of focus. I want that shallow depth of field to be so extreme that it becomes lines and curves and softness. And I don't want it in focus. I want to shoot it at f1.4, f2, f2.8, where it's just barely, just the very edge of it in focus. And that's what you actually want. So using the angle to exploit that is a good technique. All right, and I promised to show those a little bit closer up just so you could see it a little bit better. So we're just gonna do that real quick. I had very good intentions of buying flowers or going to the Botanical Conservatory this month. So it didn't happen. So I used whatever I had around my house. And these were items that, I photographed some items that belonged to my grandparents that I have in my china hutch or china cabinet. So here's the front of that's in focus. And here's the one where it shows just the sliver. So again, when you're looking down on it, just this little part here is in focus. So use angle to help you out in getting very shallow depth of field. All right, so we're gonna watch something on focus peaking real quick. This is Google Slides that I used to make this presentation, and I chose a handful, 3 to 6 videos that have like 1-minute snippets, and this is one of them, 1 or 2 minute snippets. And why reinvent the wheel? There's a gazillion people out there who've made every video on every topic known to man. So in Google Slides, I can choose to make only a certain part of the video play, but I have a playlist for you that I specifically chose for you guys that's all about macro, and the entire video is in there on that playlist. So you can watch the whole thing later on your own time, but this is just focus peaking. Now, you guys can hear the video playing? Shake your head, yes. Somebody, Ron?
I can't hear it, Kris.
No.
Can't hear it, okay. Give me just a second, video settings. Give me just a second.
Sure.
Hey, Chad. Trying to share a video and I can't get,
Did you click share sound when you shared your screen? Unshare your screen.
Okay.
Now see it on all the way to the bottom left.
Share computer sound.
Yep.
Do I need to optimize? No.
Nope.
The best thing for
There you go.
Yes, can hear you.
focusing in macro photography. It does have some downsides, but the plus sides outweigh all of the negatives. So I can't show you the focus peaking on here, so what I'm going to use my field monitor. This is the Field World monitor, and I use this for doing my videos, but it also has a focus peaking option.
Kris, we can't hear you now.
There? Better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I reversed the mute button. He's showing you on this little monitor thingy because he doesn't have a recorder stuck on top of his camera and he can't show you what's going on inside his camera. So it's just a way of showing you on another screen.
So I'm going to show you the back of that rather than the back of my camera. So focus peaking is an overlay on your EVF or the back of the screen that highlights the pixels that are sharp. So you can see here in this example, I have set my focus peaking to red. And you can see as I'm moving back and forward, you can see the red pixels that are getting highlighted. This is fantastic. I absolutely love the focus peaking. So all I've got to do now to take a picture of Bungie is move the camera forward like we talked about in point 3. And when his eyes light up with the focus peaking colour, I can just snap that picture. You can see there how easy it is to use focus peaking for manual focus in macro photography. Now on my EOS R, I also have a little box that highlights green whenever it is in focus, which is another visual aid you can get. Now remember when I talked about the live view, when you press a button you can zoom in? I can do exactly the same on my EOS R when looking through the viewfinder. So not only can I check focus peaking if I want to, I can also zoom in to see if it's in focus. Downside of that is when you zoom in, you lose the focus peaking, which is a bit of a bummer. I would have liked to have both of them, you know, best of both worlds, but unfortunately that doesn't happen. Also, focus peaking doesn't work if it's set to autofocus. Well, not on this camera. It does work with the field monitor, but not internally with this camera.
Every camera's
Focus
different
peaking,
like that.
in my opinion, is the best method to go with for macro photography. Seeing your actual pixels highlight in your EVF is fantastic, and I can generally nail focusing 80% of the time rather than missing it 80% of the time. And adding on the fact with one button I can zoom in to see where the focusing is another plus point for mirrorless cameras.
And that would be steadier if you had it on a tripod. Yeah. So that's really cool. So real quick, just a quick feedback from you guys. How do you feel about having a 1 or 2 minute clip of something shown during a workshop? Are we cool with that? Because I think it's great.
For me.
Yep,
Okay.
I am.
And you can go back. I have all of these videos plus more on a playlist for you, and I may add more to it. I tried to boil it down a little bit where I had like 100 macro videos and I was like, that's too much. People are going to get freaked out. And I took it down to about 25 or so. of the best that really showed the things we wanted to learn. So, all right, so real quick, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna show some more examples. And these are my little images of things from my grandparents that I shot here at home. Had good intentions of doing flowers that would be nice and pretty and cute and match the rest of my slideshow. And the Rona got me this month, so I did something else. Okay, so this first one, I shoot right now with a Fuji X-T2 mirrorless. Look at this little guy. He's so small. That's a lens the size of a baby food jar. And it is 50 millimeter equivalent for full frame. This was shot with no extension tube. And here's all the settings. And then I measured with a measuring tape, not just from the subject to the front of the lens, but the subject to the actual sensor. Because when you get your minimum focus distance for a lens, it's what they're actually telling you is the subject to the sensor. So they're taking the lens out of the equation. So like I have one lens, which is a 24 millimeter equivalent, 1.4, and it has like a 5 or 6 inch minimum focus distance. Well, the lens itself is a little over 4 inches. So I'm about an inch, inch and a half away from something when I'm photographing it for a minimum focus distance. It's so close. Sometimes I bump into the flower. So, okay, sorry, Facebook stuff popping up on my computer. So we're gonna go on this next slide. Again, no extension tube. And this is me trying to get as close as I possibly could get with that lens. So this is a really good exercise to do with any lens you have to see what the capabilities are. So you know how you can use it out in the field, and you know, get rid of this stuff on there. You know what the capabilities of each different lens you own are. And, you know, if you're headed out to go take photos and you don't want to take a bunch of stuff with you, you can say, well, I know this lens works this way and this lens works another way that's even closer. And that's the field of view that I really like. So it just helps you decide which gear to take with you rather than taking everything, which I am also guilty of, which is ridiculous. Okay, so I got about 8 inches closer, 7 or 8 inches closer there. And then here, I put on an extension tube. And so here we have show and tell. This is a set of extension tubes. And there's actually 2 of them stacked together. So I'm gonna take off the caps. And then I'm gonna take them apart. Well, first I'll show them together. So there they are together, and there's a little line there. That's the break in between the 2. One is a 10 millimeter and one's a 16 millimeter, and I just took them apart. There's the 10, and there's the 16, a little bit thicker. So this is the skinny one, the 10 millimeter. The 16 millimeter, I tried, and I got so close I was bumping into the item, and the camera and the lens were creating a shadow, and I couldn't even photograph the item without making a shadow in available light. There's light in my dining room from overhead. So now I went from, the last one was 12 and a half. Now I went to 7 inches and got way, way closer. So extension tubes are the cheapest way that you can take any existing lens and retain generally the sharpness that that lens has and do macro. So this particular set was about $30. And I'm going to show you another type of extension tubes. While I grab that, anybody else in here use extension tubes? Speak up if you do. Anybody? No? Nobody? Extension tubes? Extension tubes are awesome. They're really cheap. Here's another set. They usually come anywhere from 2 to a set to like 4. And the thicker they are, like on this end, the closer you can get, like stupid close. And then kind of close, pretty close, stupid close. So these come apart as well. They usually lock together, so I have to press down this little button here. Oh, there we go. So there's the stupid close one. Now this has contacts to, this is for a Canon camera, some of my Canon stuff that I haven't gotten rid of yet where I switched from Canon. But that has autofocus contacts. I almost never use autofocus with macro, just because I find it easier to manually focus. But this whole set here was like $25. It's even cheaper if you get a set of these that doesn't have the little pins, the contacts in the inside, and it's just a tube. Then you can get macro extension tubes for $10 maybe, 10 or 15, and different sizes. So kind of close, pretty close, stupid close. So extension tubes, and you just need to know what your mount is for your camera. So like for Danielle, you'd have EOS mirrorless versus your 70D would be APS-C, Canon APS-C, so it'd be EF-S mount versus Canon full frame is EF mount. So an APS-C cameras can use APS-C EFS or EF mount, but Canon full frame can only use EF. So you got to know some stuff about the mount that you're using. I apologize, I'm not a Sony or a Nikon user. Anybody else want to chime in with what the name of the mount is for Nikon or Sony? Ron or Deb?
No, I shoot Canon. I can't remember what.
Oh, that's
Nikon
right.
is.
Is there a specific name for it for Sony, Ron?
I've never looked into their extension tubes, but there probably is, because you have the APS sensor and then you have a full frame.
Right. Yeah, and you would just need to know what the name of the
whether
mount
you want
is.
to have the automatic setting or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's up to you. I mean, you can get the automatic setting. There's a camera to use the autofocus, but I find when you get so close up to objects, it has to be lit really well, or there's not quite enough contrast to do accurate autofocus. So unless I was trying to photograph some quick jumping bugs and needed a really fast, expensive autofocus macro lens, I'd be going the cheap route because I'm cheap anyway. But
Well, on my Sony, I have focus thing where you either get the red, white, or yellow lines.
peaking.
So I just use that if I do macro.
Okay. Here's another cheap macro lens that I bought one of these off of a friend of mine like 10 years ago. She wanted a fancy expensive macro lens, and then when she bought it, she realized it wasn't any sharper than this $50 clunker she sold me because of the way you do the technique with macro. You just dial in all the settings in manual usually, and you manual focus a lot. And she was doing macro for weddings specifically and wasn't really into flowers and all that stuff. And she was like, I could kick myself that I sold you that lens for $50. And then I found an exact copy of it in the bargain bin covered in dust at Jack's Camera Shop in Muncie a couple years ago, and bought another one of them because I loved it so much. So this is Phoenix brand, which is like a super cheap third-party brand from like years ago. Clunker. Does a great job. Real quick, I'll show you. We'll skip through the, let me go. Oh no, wait a minute. I don't need to do that. Hold on. I've got my examples. Show you a couple of my fancy business examples that I've done with clunker lenses. Show another one. That was done with a clunker lens. Easy peasy. So easy. Yeah, those are all done with a junk $50 lens. And the macro lens that I use currently is about a $75 Nikon from the 1970s. So we'll talk about that setup here. Yeah, aperture changes magnified. So we talked about that. Let's go on to the next one. Magnification. Extreme macro. Life size is 1-to-1 ratio. That means basically, let's say a full frame sensor. So Deb uses Canon. She has a 5D Mark IV, 33 or 4.
3.
Okay, Mark 3. So the sensor on that camera is 24 millimeters tall by 36 millimeters wide. So if I were to take a photo of a tiny little flower petal that was 20 millimeters high and it almost filled the frame from top to bottom, that would be 1-to-1. So now if that 20 millimeter tall item, I could only fit part of it on the sensor, that would be a lens that's capable of greater than 1-to-1 ratio, which is kind of a specialty macro lens. Some lenses have that feature and are capable of doing that, and some are not. So this is your specialty people who are into bugs, way up in the grill in a flower, that they want to get super into seeing the, you know, molecules of that flower. See all the little lenses on flies' eyes type of stuff. So that's extreme macro. And if you're looking at a new macro lens and you see some specifications that say it's capable of doing 1-to-1 or it's capable of doing 2-to-1 or 1-to-2, 2-to-1 is greater than life size on the actual sensor. Think of a little sticker. The sensor is a little sticker, and that image is going to be projected. Bigger than life size is 2-to-1. Life size is 1-to-1. Half size is 1-to-2. So might be worth looking up the specs on any lens that you have and see what it's capable of doing. Now, if you're a beginner, don't worry about any of that. Just kind of take pictures that are close up and just get in the swing of things and don't worry so much about the technicalities, okay? This is one of my images. This is the closest I've ever been to doing a 1-to-1. That's a little dandelion foof that's, I don't know, 5 millimeters across. And I did that with this setup. It was, I'm on an APS-C body. So you take the focal length and take it times 1.5. So it's a 90 millimeter lens, f2 lens, which is a full frame 135 millimeter equivalent. And those were my settings. And I used one of my extension tubes. I can't remember which one. And then that's the dandelion floof on the tip of the center of a tulip. And it took me about 5 or 6 shots to get it kind of sort of in focus. And I held my breath because it was really, that's super shallow. I just wanted just the dandelion floof and I wanted to see if I could do it. And I jumped up in the air and did a dance of joy when I got it. All right, so this is a quick explanation of what 1-to-1 is. We can watch it or you can watch it later. Do you guys feel like you understand it? Because if you understand it, we're not going to watch it. Anybody who doesn't understand it and wants to see the video, let me know. Otherwise, we're moving on. Nobody? Going once, going twice. Okay, moving on. It's on the playlist for macro photography.
All right, term number 2 is magnification. And this has to do with how big your subject is on your camera sensor versus how big the subject is in the real world.
Pause. All right. Next slide. Sorry, it clicked autoplay. So here's some more examples of macro. And so for people who already shoot macro, these are some ideas to change it up a little bit. So who in here already does some kind of macro?
I do.
Deb? Was that Deb?
Yep.
Okay.
I
Yep,
do
that's
too.
Deb.
Sharn?
Yeah.
Ron, what about you?
I have in the past. I haven't done anything lately.
Well, isn't that all of us? Like,
Yeah.
right? We're trying
Well,
to,
the covert, it kind of messes you up for that type of stuff.
Hey,
right?
Kris, are you following the chat box too?
I do not see the chat box, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, Danielle
'Cause
Ellingwood.
Danielle has been commenting in the chat box.
Okay.
So is Irene.
Why am I not seeing the chat box?
Maybe they can unmute themselves.
Yeah.
I try macro at times, but like I said, I'm new to using the lenses, so. But I do have extension tubes that I've been playing with.
Give me a second, guys. I'm trying to turn the chat box
No.
on. All right. Turn the poll off. I don't know why I did not see the chat box. I'm going to pull that up. There we go. Sarah's never tried macro before. All right. So some different ideas for macro here. I thought this was really an interesting way to use macro for portrait photographers or anyone who has young kids. There's nothing sweeter than seeing little baby fingers and toes and noses and
I love baby feet.
yeah, I do too. So capturing that before that tiny little nature of a baby is gone is really, really cool. Especially in relation to a person. So if you have their hand wrapped around one of your fingers so you can see the size difference, is really cool. So I thought that was a fun way to use macro. There are, and I've got some other slides coming up here in a second, kind of sort of macro that is boudoir or portraits where you take close-ups of eyes. I also looked up some uses of macro or pseudo macro where it's not like super close up, but for you, it might be more close up than you're used to taking photos of things. So if you want to think of that as macro, that kind of gets you in the ballpark of learning to be more comfortable getting close to things, getting close to people, I'm not going to fuss at you for calling it macro. So here's some quick examples of, I look at that baby toes. Pets, another one here, more baby toes, close-ups of eyes, and then, oh my goodness, my heart. So
That's a cool picture.
parents or grandparents. I did an anniversary session for my in-laws for their 50th wedding anniversary, and I did pictures of them. I did pictures of their wedding rings. I interviewed them and made this whole like video slideshow with them talking about how they met. And it is the favorite thing I've ever done with anything photo related or video or whatever out of everything I've ever done, ever. It was the best. Another one, so like, you know, your mom's hands, your spouse's hands. I just thought that was really sweet. There's the photo I used there. Some more. I mean, what parent wouldn't want that, right? Eyes. Another hand. Toes. Oh my goodness.
Oh,
I know. Like, I would have just like a whole big photo just of that, just the toes.
That just melts my heart. I love that one.
I know, it's like my ovaries are trying to kick out a dust bunny or something, seeing that. And hands again. Now I know that's not technically macro, but you know, technicalities. It's close up, and it's probably closer up than most people are used to dealing with things. I thought this was fun. I'm not a fingernail type of person, but I thought that was really cool to take the close up and jazzy looking nails. Makeup and close-ups of body parts for macro. And I've got a slide with some example photos, Basil. So I didn't forget about your request for macro for portraiture and boudoir. This one in relation to the finger, just showing how tiny those little hands are. Oh my goodness, my heart. And then your pets. This is so sweet. Just, I mean, you can tell it's a younger person with an older person, a relative, a loved one. I just thought that was really wonderful. This was kind of crazy looking. That's very fancy. So that's kind of interesting to want to try. Eyes. So we'll go back to slides here. So some of the things you can do is, if you're already shooting macro, try shooting at a much more shallow or a much deeper depth of field than you usually do. Shoot from a different angle. You can even use a solid color paper or scrapbook paper or your iPad screen with any image that you've saved from wherever as a background, because it's going to be out of focus because it's behind the item. And shallow depth of field is kind of the thing with macro. It's very difficult to achieve that deep depth of field. So you can use that to your advantage and have that background color of paper or iPad screen out of focus in the background and really broaden your repertoire of backgrounds. And you could choose the background color behind the item. So here you could choose the color of blue behind the end of that pen. Or you could put a black piece of paper or poster board far behind the flower, light it with external light, and then maybe you nail the blacks and maybe you got to massage them a little bit in editing, but still, even this lemon here, you can choose a color from the color wheel that really contrasts and makes that image pop. So those are things that you can do with macro. You can try different techniques, focus stacking, which we can talk about. That was where you shoot all the little slivers and then sandwich them together in editing. We actually had a workshop on focus stacking back in 2019. External lighting or shooting a different type of macro subject. Okay, we're going to go on. So technically macro photography is anything from 1:1 down to about 1:5 or 1:6. But like I said, if you wanted to think of pictures of hands as macro, you know, wording, semantics, if it makes you happy, go for it. And here's a couple of examples. There's a boudoir image close up. Is it technically macro? No, but it is way more close up than you're probably used to shooting with portraiture. So these are a little pair of booty shorts. So boudoir image, definitely more close up than most people are used to shooting with that, or an eye or hand somehow, or the side of an ear and the neck and the collarbone would be way more close up than you're used to doing with normal portraiture. So that's a good way to incorporate technically not boudoir, but way close up into portraiture and boudoir specifically. This is spaghetti. I thought that image was great. This is a butterfly wing down here, peacock feather, circuit board, bunch of different things that you can photograph. Gear. Okay. Before you start thinking about lenses and, oh, I got to spend money, which you don't, things to think about before lenses. Solid tripod. And there are like I often buy the no name brand or weird brand. Video, I buy name brand because it's got to be rock solid, but photo, I'll buy the less expensive brand. Shutter release cable. Oh, we got somebody entering the room, so we'll put that person in real quick. Shutter release cable I talked about before. And again, you've got the one that's for your camera. You can get wireless ones of these where it has a transmitter on top of your camera and then our transmitter that you handheld and then the receiver on top of your camera. So you can actually use it as a wireless shutter release if you want to hide your hand and put you in the picture and take your own family pictures. So a wireless version of that is good. 12-inch reflector, which is this item up here. And you guys have probably seen these in a bigger size, right? But you can get them the size around of a basketball. So if you wanted something small to take with you to the park, you can use that. If you are super cheap, you can use a wire coat hanger. You guys are gonna laugh at me for this. I used everything in the world that was homemade when I first started learning photography. You can take a wire coat hanger and stretch it out, and then take a piece, cut a old pillowcase apart or an old white t-shirt and wrap that around there. And then you can tie it, rubber band it, staple it. You can, if you want to get real fancy, you could baste it and sew it, but a wire coat hanger stretched apart with an old t-shirt on it or an old pillowcase works as a great diffuser and free for the most part to make. So, but these are cheap to buy nowadays. A lot of photo stuff is, there's off brands and Chinese knockoff stuff that you can buy. So if you're just wanting to try it out, you can get one of these for $9 or $10. They're seriously that cheap. Okay. Okay, you guys can still hear me?
Yes.
Coughing fit, my bad. Knee pad. I don't know about you guys. I don't know what age some of the other people are, but I get out at the park and after a while I get sore and I want to go home just because my butt hurts or my knees hurt. So 10 or 15 bucks and you've got a knee pad and that works great. Or raid your garage. It can be a dirty old gardening knee pad from your garage. Plant. We're going to talk about lenses, I swear. This is a plant. I got this for Christmas. I put off buying it for the longest time because I'm cheap. And good heavens, is it beautiful. So a plant is the word plant and clamp put together. So that's how they got plant. So it has a clamp here. Hi, Kevin. That has a bendy arm. And then it has this little thing on the end. Let's see if we can show that really well. So it's got this special clamp. And when I go to open it, what's special about it is it has 3 indents. It has one with no padding, one with super squishy, soft padding in the middle, so you don't mess up a flower. And then it has a little notch. And the notch is to hold that metal edge of a diffuser. It has like a metal hoop around the edges. So, and then you can tighten it down however much you want. So could you do the same thing with a clamp and drill it and put some zip ties? And then there's some bendy things you can get on Amazon. You can get a little clippy thing, but I totaled it up and I had like $15 worth of stuff in my cart and it still wouldn't work as well as this. This thing was $43. $15 to make it myself, still won't work as well versus $43 does exactly what I need. Why did I put this off? I don't know. Clamp. All right. Couple other things, a portable seat. Whatever makes you comfortable. And then focusing rail set. This is a focusing rail. So this is a doodad that you can put on top of your tripod. Do you have to have one of these? No. They're about 80 bucks brand new. I paid 35 or 40 for this, including shipping, and I bought it online used. And it moves the camera back and forth and front to back in teeny tiny little movements, and it has a little dial on the side. That's a focusing rail. So it's a little heavy. It's made out of metal. And then your camera mounts on top there, and it just goes right on top of your camera or on top of your tripod. Okay, moving on. We'll talk about the glycerin thing in a second. I'm going to skip past these. We can come back to them if we have time. This is a snippet of a video showing how to use a diffuser. I'm going to skip past this one. This is the video about the diffuser. This is a video snippet of the video about the plamp, that thing that I showed before that had the bendy arm. We can go back and watch that later. It is also in the macro playlist.
Hello, macro geeks.
We're going to go on. This is a little fold out stool that he pops it open and twists it, and it goes like 1.5 feet tall, and it's fabulous. So, and it's just like a little, it's like Frisbee sized when you're out and about. So I thought that was pretty cool. Examples of different kinds of gear. So use the minimum focusing distance of any current lens. And again, any lens that you own, you're going to be looking, see if we can show that. Here's one of the lenses that we have for, this was one of the lenses that my daughter used with her little knockabout camera kit when she was still shooting Canon. So Sigma 17 to 50 millimeter, it's a zoom lens. The 2.8 means that it can stay shooting at 2.8 the whole way through the zoom range. You can shoot at 17 millimeter 2.8, or you shoot at 50 millimeter 2.8. See if we can get that in focus. There we go. And then it has some letters after that. So there's a whole string of letters after. So you would want to type in all of that if you were Googling it and you were trying to see what's the minimum focus distance of this lens. So you can also look on the front of the lens. Some of our newbies here, I'm just making sure they know this. I know this is old hat for some of our other people, but you can look for the name of the lens right on the front of it, and that'll tell you what you need to type into Google as well. And you want to type in the name of the lens, all those letters, and then minimum focus distance. So you can see how close can I get this lens to focus. There is also an app called Fwpc. Is anybody ever familiar with Fwpc? It's an app you can get on your phone or an iPad. Anybody? No?
Sarah Pringle says yes.
Sarah Pringle? Okay, good. So Fwpc has a lot of different things. Let's see if I can find it easily or not. I don't
What
know
does
that.
it do?
I don't know that I'm going to be able to find it easily. Fwpc has a bunch of different things available. It can show you your depth of field. There we go. Open it. Okay, so here's the front of Fwpc. That's the Academy. So here's all the Fwpcs that you can get. Lots of stuff. So you can check where the sun is, the phases of the moon. You can check depth of field. So here for depth of field, I can put in the focal length of my lens. You tell it what camera you've got. So I chose that, and then what the focal length is. And then you choose what aperture you're going to shoot at and how far away the item is. And it will tell you the hyperfocal distance. Probably needs to be a discussion for another time. That's a rabbit hole that we can go down. but it tells you your depth of field near and far limit. So it tells you if that subject is 10 feet away and you want to shoot at 1.4, you're going to have approximately, for this particular lens and that setup I had typed in, your depth of field is 6.5 inches thick. Not enough to get a whole person in focus, or maybe just the front part of the person. So like the back of their head might not be in focus. So Photopills is really cool, that you can look up the depth of field. And it's kind of handy if you are a little freaked out about shooting shallow depth of field with things and you want to know, okay, technically how many inches, how many feet, like how much do I have of that zone that's supposed to be in focus. It's kind of cool. It is a paid app, but it's like $10. Do you absolutely have to have this? No. Is it handy? Yes, it is. It will tell you what time sunrise and sunset is. You can, all kinds of stuff, the elevation, shadows. It'll help you calculate for time lapse, all kinds of stuff. Star trail calculations, fun stuff. More involved for our people who are ready for that sort of thing. Another thing you can do for macro is super cheap. Macro on the super cheap. You can add one of these guys. This looks like a magnifying glass, doesn't it? And this will screw on the front of your lens. So this lens that I have here happens to be a 77 millimeter front measurement. So this can go right on there. This particular one was about 30, but you can get a set of 4 different, you can get a set of 4 different ones of these that are at different strengths, different magnifying strengths for about $10 or $12. You can also hold a magnifying glass just in front of the thing you want to take pictures of, but then you're like using 2 hands, so take a buddy, right? So that's what that looks like on the front of the lens. It's sometimes not as good of quality as you would have just the lens by itself, but it does get you closer. So that's probably being really picky about quality. It's okay. And it's definitely a good way to start, is to throw a +4 or a +10. Ooh, I'm out of focus. On the front of your camera. So that's nice. What else do we have here? You have dedicated macro lenses. So are you guys familiar with, like Deb, for example, with Canon, that fancy macro lens that they have that's L series professional lens, and it's like what, $1,000?
Yeah, I've got a 100 millimeter macro.
Right.
It was about 800.
Okay. Disclaimer: Deb's a professional and takes pictures of food for menus and all kind of fancy schmancy stuff. So she invests in fancy stuff. I, however, I'm a cheapskate. So.
Oh, that was my dream lens, Kris.
Okay.
I was so excited when I got that one.
So I had the $50 one. I talked about this earlier before you were on here, Kevin. So this is a $50 one that I bought in the used bin at a camera shop. But you can also take whatever lens you've got and you can add these extenders that makes it focus closer. Canon and Nikon, Sony, they all make this as well. This is an actual Canon brand extension tube. That is a 25 millimeter. So you can use one that's actually from your camera brand, and I always recommend to buy used, whether it's a car or lenses stuff. Let it depreciate in somebody else's hands and then you swoop in and get a good deal. So my current setup, we talked about the other set of extension tubes. These are 2 guys all stacked together. So an extension tube, Kevin, you missed that part. It's just a thing you put between your camera body and your lens to make it focus closer. He may be laughing because I'm calling him out. I'm saying, specifically saying stuff to you. Okay, all right, so here is my current setup. I see him tipping back in his chair, laughing. Okay, all right, so camera. I've got a vintage lens. This thing cost me $75. It's a Nikon 50mm f3.5, and it was $75 for this and an extension tube that came with it. eBay is your friend. Or yard sales, estate sales, all kinds of stuff. So this is an old lens that I have to set the f-stop or the aperture on the lens and just swirl it until I get to the right setting. And it is not for my particular brand of camera, so I have to have an adapter. I put the adapter on there first, and then I can put the lens on. And I have to focus manually, but that's okay. So that's an old lens from like the 1970s, before some of you were born, but it's super cheap, okay? And if I'm gonna, I would take Deb's $800 lens and I would focus it manually anyway. So why not get the super cheap stuff? So this is the extension that came with that old Nikon lens from the 1970s. So I get that on there. I have to get used to Nikon mounting reverse way, but so you see me fumbling with it, flipping it around. There we go. You get the whole thing together. I love, love, love vintage lenses because they're cheap and they're still super sharp. Don't let anybody tell you the vintage stuff isn't sharp. It's awesome. Okay, so extension tubes. Another thing that you can do, reverse mount. A reverse mount, how many people have heard of reverse mount? I know Sue Sells just bought a reverse mount adapter for her camera. A reverse mount ring is just a piece of metal. That silver stuff is me writing on it with a Sharpie because I worry I'm going to lose stuff. So this goes on your camera body, and then you put your lens on backwards. Has anybody ever seen this? No?
Yes, I used to use one on film-based cameras.
Okay. All right, so we put this little ring on, metal ring, but here's the thing. Before you do this and you start putting your lens on there, especially a modern lens doesn't have any little swirly thing on there to select your f-stop. It's done electronically in the camera. So here's the thing. If you want to shoot at f8, you got to put the lens on the camera, put your settings together, set it at f8, turn the camera off, and then take the lens off. So it makes the lens stop down. Because once you put this adapter on, you're in full manual, baby. Driving a stick shift. So then this is not the correct millimeter size, but you screw the lens onto the adapter and the lens is backwards. It looks crazy. And so you just want to make sure that when you're holding your camera, you hold it really tight and you're not next to any rocks or anything sharp. So give me a second, Sarah, I'll answer your question. I'll see that in the chat there. So you want to make sure that you don't accidentally drop your camera and hit a rock on the edge of a flower bed out at a park or something, or hit your dining room table and damage the backside of your lens, because especially for newer lenses, all these electronics, boy, that's an expensive repair. So you want to be careful, but a macro reverse mount ring, crazy cheap. $5, $6. They are kind of, got to really hold on to it because it's skinny. To change that. So $5 or $6, but a couple things you need to know. You've got to know the outer diameter of the lens that you're wanting to use with it. So that is found in the picture up here. You'll see that there. And it is like a 0 with a little slash through it with a number. You see that it has the 0 with the slash through it, the 77 right there. So that's a 77 millimeter filter thread size. So you would need a reverse mount adapter that's for 77 millimeter, because you're going to screw the front of the lens toward the camera. So that's a way that you can achieve macro with a lens you already own.
What's the point in a reversing lens?
Okay,
Somebody wants to know.
Reversing the lens allows the lens to focus way, way closer. And
So you can't screw it in, you're actually holding it, right?
no, you screw it in.
Okay.
The adapter that I had was, I couldn't find, because I haven't shot Canon for, I'm out of focus here. I haven't shot Canon for year and a half, but I still have some Canon stuff. We kept one of our older APS-C bodies for a photo booth camera and stuff, but so I didn't have the right size of attachment on the outside for this 77 millimeter filter size lens. It's kind of very, see it with my hand, that's kind of a big honking, big round lens. So, but one side is metal and is the mount for your camera, so the exact shape of how it attaches onto your camera, and then the other side has male filter threads. And then the inner ring of your lens is female filter threads. So this isn't the right size, but it would screw on like that, like a filter. And then back here is where it attaches to your camera. Does that make sense? And it allows, by flipping it around, remember, the image comes into your lens and then it gets projected on the sensor. So by flipping it around, you allow your lens to focus way, 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 way closer. Okay, helicoid tubes. I'm guessing nobody's ever heard of helicoid tubes. You can surprise me. Anybody? Okay, helicoid tube is, you know, we talked about extension tubes, and you get like, this is the skinny one that gets you kind of close. Then you got the middle one, pretty close. And these go between your camera body and your lens, and it just allows you to focus closer. And then we got stupid close, all up in a bee's butt, okay? These are really cheap. A focusing helicoid is kind of like a variable extension tube. It stretches. So this is a small one, but it's like a metal tube that zooms. So when I turn it, see if I can get it to go, it expands and gets longer. So when you're shooting macro, you can, I got ink all over my fingers, that's funny. You can change the length of this by turning it like a zoom on a lens, right? And so it changes how close you can get to the item. And so that is called a helicoid tube. And helicoid tubes are all manual. It's a piece of metal. So if you got a modern lens, set that f-stop before you get going. If you got an old lens, because you're cheap like me, and you want to set that f-stop on the old 1970s lens that's older than your parents, Kevin, then you just dial it all in, right? But if you use a modern lens, you're going to have to set the f-stop beforehand. So this is, it's like a zoom extension tube. Does that make sense? And these are stupid cheap. Anywhere from $10 to $20, which for a piece of metal, maybe you don't think it's that cheap, but sometimes these have the mount for your camera on the back, and sometimes they just have the mount for whatever type of lens. And so like here, this is a slim helicoid adapter. And so it has a mount for my camera brand, and then it has a mount for a vintage camera. And then I could have like 5 or 6 different of these little zoom helicoids. And I could use different ones. I could say, oh, I want to get even closer. Forget that skinny thing. Give me the fat one. I want to try that one. And I want to get really super close. Zooming in on these butts, right? And so I could put a slim one and then just change out helicoids and then put a vintage lens in front of that. So it starts looking like a little Frankenstein put together. But it's cheap. It's so cheap, and it works great, and it's nice and sharp. So it works great. It just takes a little bit of planning to find the parts that you need, is all. So, so somebody asked, where can you find cheaper extension tubes? I checked B&H and Hunt's for Nikon full frame. We want to support Hunt's as much as we can. What I always do is I start on Amazon. I find the item and I look up reviews. And then sometimes I go to YouTube and I watch, try to find a review for that type of item, or try to find a video of somebody using it. And then I go to Hunt's and look. And if I don't see it on their website, you can always call them. They're really nice guys, and they'll help you out with whatever you're looking for. So if you can't find it on their site, I would just call them. Sometimes it might be misspelled in the product listing, or maybe it's something they don't carry, but it's worth asking. So take the lens you've got. You can flip it around with a reverse macro adapter. Go away, notifications. You can use extension tubes. You can use these screw-on filters. That one I had that was really fat was like 30 bucks. Or you can get a set of like 4 of these, and these are on, I made you guys a shopping list. You don't have to go out and buy any of this stuff, but if you want to go look for it, hopefully that helps. You do have to know the millimeter filter thread size, which again, that's that 77 number. Yours might be 55, it might be 67, it might be 72, 58, 55. So this tells how big around the front of your lens is. You need to know that if you're gonna go get these screw-on filters that just allow you to get closer. And there's like 4 different magnifying glass type strengths, okay? Vintage lens with an adapter, extension tubes, and helicoid tubes. What is all this stuff? Go away. Go. Okay. All right, so this is an example. For time, we don't have to go through this. It's on the macro playlist. This was like a 1 to 2 minute clip that shows, reminding me to calibrate my monitor. Yes, yes, I know. Shows the difference between a dedicated macro and extension tubes. I'll cut to the chase for you. You have to get up to F11 to F16 for it to start to be the same. And generally extension tubes are going to be a little fuzzy around the edges. So here's an example of some of the things he shows. And he has a super fancy commercial studio. So the video is kind of cool to watch because you get to see inside his fancy photo studio. This is that stool. I won't show the video, but that's the one that collapses down the size of a Frisbee, and it's really cool. It's in the shopping list. Oh no, this is the one about focusing rails. I apologize for coughing. Is there anybody here besides Deb and I that uses off-camera flash?
What's that?
Off-camera flash, like wireless flash. So you have the camera, but the flash is over here and it's not attached. Get a drink. That's from Irene.
Yes, you should get some.
So unless I'm mistaken, I think, well, no, Basil uses off-camera flash. He uses like studio lighting stuff. So natural light, having a diffuser helps. And there's an example image here in a second that shows diffuse light. That's your best place to start, is to just start with something to block the light and make it not so harsh. you know, when the sun shines on something really strong and it makes a really dark shadow? A diffuser is a see-through white disc, and you put that, here's the sun, and then you put the disc, and then you've got your item you're trying to photograph. So it makes like a see-through screen. So whatever you're trying to take pictures of isn't blasted to pieces by the sun. And they're really cool. Again, if you're cheap like me, you can take, I did this when I very first started learning, you can take a wire hanger, stretch it out, and put an old pillowcase or a piece of t-shirt on it. You can tape it together, you can staple it together, and if you really want to get fancy, you could sew it on there. But the concept is the same, and it's free. So it's just helping filter out the sun so it's not so strong. So you can take pictures of flowers and bugs and mushrooms and all kinds of fun stuff and not have super strong sun on it. The reflector things, again, this whole set, you can get them as cheap as 10 bucks. The reflector side, like this silver side, take a piece of cardboard, scrunch up some aluminum foil, and tape it to a piece of cardboard. Free, pretty much. You probably have all the stuff at home. So do you have to buy a $10 reflector or a fancier brand for more money? No. You could start with a piece of cardboard and some aluminum foil on it and some tape. And that would bounce the light. That would ricochet the sun and put it where you want it, which is kind of cool. Artificial light. Only a couple of us in here use artificial light. There's some links to some products. I'm a big user of this particular product here, which is a Fwpc. I also use MagMod, but look at this. That's a Pringles can. So very innovative. I can see that they use black tape to cover up the Pringles can thing, but that'll work. If you got a flash, that'll work. If you just have a pop-up flash, have somebody help you, but take some scissors, some strong scissors, and cut up a rectangle of plastic from a milk jug and tape it in front and make like a little U in front of your little pop-up flash. That'll soften your pop-up flash. And you can use a little pop-up flash on your camera to add flash to your macro. This is really old school. I used to do this for a long time. You take a rubbing alcohol bottle and cut the bottom of it off and stick that on your flash. And when the light comes through there, it softens it up. I also, it's probably too involved time-wise for what we have left, but you can use a 3x5 index card and a rubber band to make a great flash modifier, and it's like 2 cents. I used that for a very long time as a flash modifier. So this is the difference between having bright sun shining on something and having that see-through diffuser. So that's kind of why you would want to use something between the sun and your item. Because when the sun hits it, you've got, you know, splotchy shadows and stuff. You've got real strong shadows where the sun's hitting it. And it makes a big difference and makes it look much more even when you've got something to filter the sun through. These are fancy examples of when somebody's using a flash, and that's the flash is being controlled off the top of the camera. So the flash is coming from another direction from where the camera is pointed. This spider is a great example of that. So you're taking the picture, but the flash is coming from the side and pointing down at the spider. So like a spotlight, he looks like he's on stage or something there. Over here, you can see the light's coming from over here and shining down on the caterpillar. Here, the light's coming from this direction. Same thing here. You can see the light's coming from over there, coming from over there. Same thing here. Light's coming from this direction. You can see it because the light's there, but it starts to get shadow over here. So that means the light source was right here. So you can make it look like this by putting your item next to a window. That would help. If you don't have flash. So an interesting lighting on something instead of flat, even lighting, I think always looks more interesting, but you know, that's just me. All right, so some final thoughts. We can talk about gear real quick. a good tripod or a little shorty one, look at this guy. There's a fancy brand named Manfrotto that they make in Italy. Ooh, and it's like $50. This one was 20. Okay, so it has a little bendy head at the top and the legs go out flat so it can get real down low to the ground, and then you just attach your camera on the top. So a teeny tiny tripod is kind of cool for macro. So that's fun. The shutter release cable, the little clicker that plugs into the side of your camera, helps to keep from having your hand bump it and make it blurry when you take the picture. Fill the frame and be aware of the background. This photo right here, I took out at Foster Park, and I was looking down at the fern at first, and the background was kind of brown because it was dirt. So I had to like get down on my belly. And then I turned the camera funky because I wanted it to be in the frame a certain way. But I had to get down on my belly for there to be grass behind it in the background, and it looked a lot better. So sometimes you have to change where you are to make the background look nicer. Constant light, you can use a flashlight. Try using a flashlight. Try taking a flashlight and taping a piece of paper towel over the end for a soft source of light. That works really well, and it's cheap. And we all know I like cheap. I didn't bring it, but here is a ring flash. You can get a cheap version of these for like 40 bucks, or you can get a fancy version that's a couple $100. Some people are really into these. Sometimes it's a big flash like that, and sometimes it's a little controller, and it'll do constant light like a flashlight, and then sometimes it'll do flash. And it'll do like left side only or right side only. And those are handy. They screw onto the front of your lens. That goes in the top of your camera, your hot shoe, and goes off when you take a picture. Trying to make sure this is beginner friendly. Couple of ideas. Get some swipe files. Let me show. You can save pictures off the internet. We all know how to save pictures off the internet, right? So here's all the pictures that I had for the workshop. And you can save pictures on your computer. I call them swipe files, like I'm swiping somebody else's ideas. And I name the folders, like what type of picture it is. And it helps me save ideas to try later. So something you can try there. And keep a notebook. I have a specific kind of notebook that I like, but keep a notebook to write down ideas or places to go, or settings you tried, questions you have. I used to write in my photography books, I used to write notes out to the side and highlight things, but I would actually write questions or put sticky notes on them or stick an index card in there with questions. Anything that helps you learn. So here's some of my actual images, macro images that are mine. All the other ones in the slides were just from all over the internet, but these are actually mine. And there's just a thing over to the side about, I started out doing macro and then kind of found that I liked other things. I really like really contrasty black and white, but it took me a while to get to that point. I don't know why, I just always did color and didn't mess around with black and white as much until just the past year or two. And now I really like it. And let's see. What else? This is some of my fancy macro stuff from paid work. I use flash a lot with these only because I'm in dark churches and dark reception halls. I do a lot of weddings. So macro can be anything you want it to be as long as it's close up. So gear. Which setup did you think was most likely for you guys to try? Deb, I know you have a dedicated macro lens. So
I do, yes.
What's the closest you've ever been to an item to photograph it? How close to food have you been?
Oh man, I've been right up there in it. I
Like
can get
a
with
couple
that lens,
inches?
you can get less than 12 inches.
Okay,
Yeah,
that is close in there.
it is. I
I'll
get
go
right up and personal with it. It's
very
good
cool.
time.
Very cool. Have you ever needed to get closer than that and had trouble getting closer or no?
Not since I got that lens, no.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Are you currently using something for macro or you're trying to figure out how to convert a lens you already have? Irene says she wants to try extension tubes and she asked me about the notebook. Oh, Irene has a macro lens. Irene, unmute yourself. Tell us about your macro lens. Don't be shy. I wish I could unmute. Okay, so type for me and I'll read it. What kind of macro lens do you have, Irene?
I think
Type in
she
the
said
chat.
she's got the same one I have.
Oh, okay. Well, go on with yourself. Okay. And
Yeah,
Danielle.
so does Charm.
Okay, and Charm has it too. Look at all you spendy ladies. Oh my goodness. Same as Deb, she says. Okay. And then Danielle says she's used extension tubes. Danielle, are your extension tubes autofocus or are they just plain old metal tubes manual? See if Danielle's there where she can answer. Curious what kind of extension tubes. Just plain old metal. Okay, so you're setting the aperture and then using the extension tube, yeah? Probably. So are you using, Danielle, are you using manual focus? That's a good question. Okay, Irene's asking, Danielle says, yes, she's always using manual focus. Okay. Irene wants to know, excuse me, coronavirus. I'm over it, but it's not over me. Okay. Irene is asking, do you always have to set the aperture first? Only if you have a newer lens, because the aperture is usually set electronically on the camera body, right, Irene? So there's no aperture ring here to set the f-stop. So I'll just show you, for example, this is one of my lenses. Look at that. I set the aperture on the body. This is a modern lens, but it's very old school design. That's Fuji aesthetic. But most modern lenses do not have that. So if you have a modern lens that you're trying to use extension tubes with, or you're trying to use a reverse macro, reverse lens mount, you do have to put this on your camera, set the aperture, set the f-stop, turn it off, take it off, put the adapter on there, flip it around or put it on the extension tubes and then do it. The only exception for that would be if you get the extension tubes that have the little contacts, then it will read the aperture and it'll talk to your lens. And those are just usually a teeny bit more expensive. So if it's worth it to not have to mess with that, I would look for ones that has these little contacts, okay? If they're plain metal, then it's full manual driving a stick shift for you. What else? Irene asked about the notebook. Let's talk about that at the end. Remind me. It's called a Traveler's Notebook, and it's super slick and cool. But if nobody else has a question about the notebook, we'll talk about that at the end, if that's okay. Any ideas that I missed? Your own macro. So starting out cheap, for the people who are not spendy, like Deb, Charmin, Irene, I'm teasing.
We love you, Kris.
Deb, you know I'm cheap, okay? So what would everybody else's preferred way be to try to get to doing macro? What do you think you would try to use with your current lens setup? What do you think is the first thing you would look at to try? Would it be the extension tubes? Would it be a clunker on eBay? Don't knock it. All those fancy ring shots on my website, they were all done with a $50 clunker. Vintage, another vintage. 1970s Nikon. Ooh. Ah. It's good stuff. Or the, I don't know where I put it now. The little reverse mount, or putting one of these on the front of your lens. This is cheap too. And you don't have to worry about changing settings. You might have to manually focus because it's gonna get you in there. So what does anybody think? What do you think you would go look up first to see about doing macro? Anybody?
In my case, Christy, I already have the Sony 100mm f2.8 1:1 macro lens.
Oh, you spendy people.
So it's
Okay.
more a situation getting out and using it.
Getting out and using it. Okay, having some, I'll flip through some images here at the end to give you some inspiration. So what is that celebrity talk show that had the squares, Hollywood Squares. I'm blocking you, Ron, and Deb, and Charm, and Irene. This is an old TV show from like the 70s, 60s and 70s, I think. Maybe into the 80s. That was
I
the
remember that show.
Jim Bullock era. This is an old people joke. All right, so the other people who are not spendy, Danielle, did you say you had a fancy one too?
No, I just use the extension tubes.
Extension
I've
tubes?
tried the little bubbly screw-on thing, and I couldn't get that to work very well.
Yeah. This was my years ago. This was my very first try into it, and I had to dig to look for this. Y'all are welcome. I was digging in my basement.
So Deb, I have a question. I never thought about it, but so my lens says 1 to 2.8. So what does that mean? That means I see it
Okay.
all the size, or what does that mean?
No, the 2.8 is your aperture.
It's the aperture, yeah. So then
Yeah.
what was she saying about one?
It's a 1-to-1 lens, though.
It's a 1-to-1?
It is a 1-to-1, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's two different things you're talking about there, Charm. The 1 to 2.8 that you see on the front of the lens here, that means it's a
aperture.
constant 2.8 aperture, and it can zoom, or in your case, that's a prime, but it's a 2.8 aperture. For zoom lenses, if it says that, it means it can go anywhere along the length of the zoom and still stay at 2.8. Some lenses will say like f3.5 to 5.6. And when you zoom those, you can't stay as open with the aperture. Like the most open it could be is 5.6. So Danielle, real quick, what lens are you using with extension tubes?
I believe I was using a 24 to 105.
Okay, 24 to 105 is an f4 lens from Canon. It can be a constant f4 throughout the range of that zoom. So yeah, so how much have you tried it with the extension tubes? Did you try the stupid close, that one?
I think I actually kept 2 of them together to get really close. I was just playing one day. I think I only tried it once. So
that's really close. Were you like trying to take close-ups of like your cat's nose or something?
Trying to get like inside a flower. I don't know, just seeing what I could do with it, basically.
Yeah. So just to show you, 2 of these together. This one is 31 millimeters. This is the stupid close. And then this is a 13 plus a 21 is 34. So this is 3 millimeters thicker than this. So stupid close, stupider close. So 2 of these stacked together equal just one of these. So it's kind of nice to have the 3 different thicknesses so you can decide how close you want to get. Let's look real quick. And again, cheapy. If you just want to dip your toe in the water and try some stuff, then I would do everything dirt cheap. I would use a hanger with a pillowcase on it and a rubber band. I would, nobody cares, especially if you're at home. But like, I would use that out in the park. Ask Deb; she knows. I have no shame. Here's some abstracts.
She would do that, yes.
I would. Okay, so here's those abstracts. This is the underside of a mushroom. That's really cool. Some rust.
That's
now, this
cool.
technically
That's
is
nice.
not close enough to be. Oh, thanks, Bernadette. Thanks. And hey, when you guys get this, remember there's going to be a playlist. There's a shopping list and there's a playlist of YouTube videos ready to go for you guys that I personally picked out for you. So lots of further learning for you. Thank you so much for being here, Bernadette. She's saying in chat she's leaving. So this fork image is not technically macro, but it's kind of close up, and I just thought it was way cool. So you can tell the lighting's kind of coming across, right? Making those shadows. I thought that was really cool. These are baskets. Or I don't know, pieces of baskets. Maybe it's not even macro, but I love the pattern. This is your reflection on the end of a ballpoint pen.
Oh, wow.
Extreme macro, right? I thought this was all kinds of funny.
That's fun.
That's really close up, but that is fun.
That's cute.
Very creative. There's that one of the speaker grill. These are forks stacked up, and it just makes like a really cool curvy thing. But I'm crazy, and the line in the background drives me nuts, but we'll just not talk about that. It's cool. Crystals. My daughter loves crystals, so I thought that was something that she might be interested in doing. This is something called ferro fluid, which is like an oil with little iron particles in it. And then when you hold a magnet underneath it, it pops up into little spikes. And then you can light it with something. Yeah. And then you just pour it back in the little bottle. But you can pour it out in a dish or whatever, and you hold a magnet underneath it and it does that. So ferro, like ferrous for iron, F-E-R-R-O, ferro fluid. I don't remember exactly how much it was, but you can find it on Amazon. There's the paper image where you put just pieces of paper and kind of fan them out and shine light on it. Butterfly wing. I don't know what kind of lens you'd have to do that for. Like, you can even hook your camera to a microscope if you get the right little metal adapter thingy that's cheap. Butterfly wing again. A speaker grill or a car grill. This is coral. That's actually a park bench, but I just really like the lines. Little stick pins. This is a flower, but like kind of almost out of focus. Dragonfly wing. So if you put a dragonfly wing like down on the table and try to get like super duper close to it. Snow crystal. Some people take pictures of individual snowflakes. Larry Kilgore, who did our astrophotography. Yes, using glycerin, Sarah. I'll hurry because I want to talk about glycerin. So all kinds of fun stuff. Oh, look at that one. Isn't that fun?
That's fun.
The shadows. That's so cool. I love free and cheap. Anyway. All right. So glycerin. You can use, go back to one of these slides that had the water droplets. And there is a water droplet video on the playlist for you guys. Oh, hold on. Going back. There it is. Okay, so water droplet images, and I've got some other ones saved for you. You can use a spray bottle to just mist water droplets all over a flower. And like one of those little sample ones, travel size that you get at the drugstore, or you can get them online. You can spray those, or you can place the water droplet with a syringe, and not like a pokey, you're gonna get a shot at the doctor's office syringe. This is called an industrial syringe. So the end of it is not sharp. It's just like a little skinny tube, okay? And you mix glycerin with water, and you kind of have to tinker with it to see what's the right amount of glycerin to water amount that makes the water sticky enough to stay on the item. And then you just barely squeeze out a little bit and you place it where you want with that little syringe, the little shot thingy. So everything, and this is something I personally have not tried, but I want to try it so bad, it's not even funny. So Sarah, I don't know if you've used it, say something and tell me, but everything that I had read said stop and use like a couple of drops of glycerin to a 1 or 2 ounce spray bottle. And then if it's not sticking well enough, add extra drops of glycerin. And glycerin is vegetable glycerin. You can get a bottle of it that's like 16 ounces, 12 or 16 ounces for like $10. It's enough that it'd last you forever. I actually have some, I should have tried it, but you know, I've had a rough month, coronavirus. It's like my excuse for everything this month. Many things I wanted to do did not get done. But I had a bottle of it from a failed craft experiment a couple years ago when I tried to make soap at home. You can laugh. It's okay. You can laugh. So I kept all the stuff from it because I'm like, I spent all this money on this crafty stuff and, you know, kept all the stuff. So big bottle, Amazon or whatever, wherever you want to buy. Big bottle's like $10 and it hardly takes any to do this. But the glycerin makes it sticky. The glycerin and the water makes the water sticky enough to, Irene says she got some from the kitchen store by mail. It makes the water sticky enough to stick to the plant or flower or thread or whatever you want to use. If you find a spider web and you don't feel bad about wrecking their home, if the spider's not there, you can spray a spider web with some water. And I would spray it with just plain water. So at least it comes off there. So you're not completely wrecking their home with glycerin. But you can make a sparkly spider web by spraying it with water. But for flowers, a little bit of glycerin, a couple drops of glycerin in one of those teeny tiny spray bottles. And then just take some out of that in the syringe and place it. And what's cool about the water droplets, and let me pull up the examples of the water droplet photos, is that the water droplets reflect whatever is behind it. So see, there's a flower there. This thing, this shape in the background was a flower. And so if you had water droplets hanging off of a pencil, and there were striped pencils in the background, let me see, water droplets. There we go. Here's the droplets images. There's one. The flower's in the background. See, it's reflected in the droplet. Isn't that cool? And actually, this is on top. I think they might have flipped this in Photoshop. They might have like rotated this picture upside down. Here's another one where it's hanging on the stem of another flower and it's reflected. Isn't that cool? It's so close up, it's not even funny. Here's water droplets sticking to, I don't even know what type of plant that is. That's not a dandelion because it's not splayed out the same way as a dandelion, but water droplets I thought was really cool. You'll see me out at Foster Park this year with my little spray bottle and syringe. There's the same one that we had before, just shown a little bit more close up. Look at this one.
Oh, I'm going with you, Kris. I want to try that.
I want to try it too. Well, I'm going to have to bring my knee cushion so my butt and my knees don't hurt because I'm old.
You gotta stop saying that.
Here's another one. Now, I don't know how they got this to reflect. I'm thinking it was either a printed picture or piece of scrapbook paper or an iPad screen that had a picture of the world. And then they put that behind the flower petal with the drop on it. But it's so cool. And
Very
this
cool.
one, also very cool. And just all these colors are just a wash behind it because whatever's behind it was so far away. And when I say so far away, it could have been 6 inches. Because with macro, everything's magnified, right? So water droplets, start out with a couple drops of glycerin per 1 to 2 ounce bottle. And then if that's not sticky enough, increase extra drops of glycerin. So you might have to have like a little travel thing of glycerin and like, you know, get all mad scientist with it out in the flower beds. But very cool type of photography to do. So focus peaking, we talked about that, how setting focus peaking. Everyday images, I would start with something that you just love and try taking pictures of it. So there's fountain pens. I love fancy fountain pens. So I think I'm going to try doing something with that. This is just basket weave. Kind of interesting. Oh, that's not macro. That's the inside of an instrument. And that made it into the wrong folder, but it's cool. Leaf with ice crystals on it. Spaghetti. Lines of wood on a tree trunk. That's inside an instrument again. I just thought it looked cool. Water drops. That feels a little fancy. I don't know if I'm brave enough to try that. Soap bubbles. You can freeze a soap bubble, or you know, you get the little bubble containers from the dollar store and go outside.
I've done one of those.
Yeah?
They're hard to do.
Was it?
Because I did it like 3 years ago when it was super cold over New Year's.
Uh-huh.
And it was also windy, so it kept popping my bubbles.
Gotcha.
But I've got one really good one. Took me 3 days. They're cool.
You gotta be patient. Yes, yeah. Frozen soap bubbles.
It took some doing, but they're pretty because they're all different, like a snowflake.
Right.
No two are alike when you make them.
Yeah, that looks really fancy. And then the curly Q frost that's like on the windshield of a car. I think that's really cool too. Here's smoke. And then if you hit it with a colored light, there's the one I was talking about, the tip of a colored pencil. And these are pencils lined up behind it, and that's what's being reflected. Looks like a little rainbow. That's really cool. And I had this in here just to tease my daughter because I hate candy corn with a passion. It's so gross. Frost. Oh, I must have deleted the frost picture. So lots of ideas for droplets, collectibles, commercial stuff, pictures of watches. That's a little bit more fussy than I would want to deal with. This is more my speed. This is very fancy. But there's a lot you can do. Parts of a computer, or you know, if you have like the side of a computer tower case that will come off, and you can take pictures of the inside of the computer. That'd be kind of interesting to do. One of my recommendations, besides trying the water and glycerin thing, was a rocket blower, which is the little squeezy thing. I'll show one of those here in a second, and a little pair of tweezers, because I always get some kind of dog hair or a random seed or a little bit of something that's right on the flower I'm trying to take a picture of. And it's in my way, or I don't pay attention, and then I get home later and I'm like, oh, I can't Photoshop that out. That is too tiny and in there. And I really love this picture, and it's got a hair on it. And it's a hair that would be really hard to get rid of. So having a little something to take care of that ahead of time would be cool. Scroll down and see if there's anything else. Focus peaking. No. Video guide, nope. Yep, nope. This guy, just so you know, he is in the playlist, and I put links to his Facebook group, Macro Madness Geeks, and they share all kinds of pictures. And then he has a paid thing online where you can do like a membership and get more help from him. But even his group on Facebook is free, and his videos on YouTube are free, and he's wonderful. So he goes out in the woods and he shows you how to do all kinds of stuff. Taking pictures of flowers and leaves and textures of wood and all kinds of goodies. So Mike Moats, and you'll see him in the resources page. So I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to show you guys the resources page real quick. These are all kinds of pages that I pulled up for you guys, comparing Canon, Nikon, Sony, and Fuji macro lenses, using vintage macro lenses, or you can search for yourself on YouTube or Google. How to take pictures of freezing bubbles. This is an hour-long thing all about everything flower photography. It's a free video to watch. Couple of different blog things that talk about just different macro ideas, adding dewdrops, and then here's all the stuff about Mike Moats. So that's how you can find him. So some links for further stuff. And here's the shopping list. Do you have to buy any of this? No, you do not. But it's all there. And I usually look on Amazon, read the reviews. Then I go on YouTube and I look up videos of people using it or a review of it. And then I go and look and see if Hunt's has it first before buying from Amazon. Hunt's photo and video sponsors things for the club. They brought a guy in to speak for us for free back in 2019, and they're hosting that bird photography thing. So that costs money, and they put up the money to provide those things to us. So we try to buy from them whenever we can. So a lot of these links are for Amazon, but there's the link to Hunt's photo and video, and they try to help us out. So we should try to buy from them whenever we can. So, but this is a list of all the stuff. So that plus, this is at the bottom here. If you click on this, it'll take you straight to, here's my playlist of macro videos. It's like 25, 27 something, 27 videos on macro stuff that I drilled down from like 100 to 27 to try to give you some macro information, but not overwhelm you. So have to request Alan and Sam, Irene is saying. Request Alan or Sam, those are our guys at Hunt's Video. And you have to tell them you're from the Fort Wayne Photographers Club. Okay, close out of this stuff. It's showing Facebook for me. So that's the playlist, and I tried to front load it with the most important stuff up toward the top. And I started with a funny one about a landscape guy who thought macro photography was easy, and he was wrong. So what do we think about format-wise? This was probably too much to try to go through tonight. Irene will cycle back around to the notebook thing. What do we think about having links to things to learn more, and like a curated playlist and a shopping list? What do we think of that? Is that good? Helpful? Links are awesome, Irene says.
I think that would be good.
Okay, so I know this might not be something that everybody would have time to do right away, but it's something you could always come back to and keep coming back to it over time as you learn. So again, some of the videos that were embedded, those were, these are clips, because in Google Slides I can say just play from this time to this time, but the list is the full length video. So, and that is down at the bottom. And for the smartphone people, if you pull up the PDF on your screen, you can scan the QR code with your phone and then save that website address for the whole playlist on your screen on your phone and watch them at your leisure whenever you want. The list separate PDFs. The list can be separate PDFs if you'd like, That way you don't have to go through the whole slide presentation to get to the shopping list and the learning links. I can make those separate and just name them like the macro workshop learning links, macro workshop shopping links, and macro workshop YouTube playlist. Separate would be fantastic, Irene says. Okay, yeah, I can do that. I'll separate those out, but then you also have a PDF of the whole presentation. So you can go back and see anything that was in here. Does anybody have any questions or any of the terms maybe didn't understand? Any particular thing? Do we remember what this is?
That's your focusing rail.
Focusing rail, yeah. So, and how could you use this? Listen, it's the teacher in me like bugging you guys asking questions.
If you put it on a tripod and then your camera goes on top, so when you're doing your macro photography, you turn the dials and it moves the camera just a little ways backwards and forwards or left and right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could use it for framing too.
Yes.
Like just a smidge, this way, that way, little teeny tiny amounts. And then focus stacking, we barely talked about that. Again, there was a workshop back in 2019 about that, but that was an in-person one, so it wouldn't have been recorded. I think there was a PDF to that. Lindsay, one of our members, had taught that. So I'll look and see if there's a PDF for focus stacking. And if we need to, I can always make a video, just like shoot a bunch of pictures and then save a video of me working in Photoshop on my computer of how the focus stacking works. The focus stacking is like 10 to 50 slices in focus, and then you use the software to link them up together to make the whole thing in focus, which is kind of cool to absolutely make sure you get it all in focus. What is this thing? Oh, this is the weird one. This was at the end of the list. Helicoid. Yeah, Irene remembers. It's a helicoid. It's like an extension tube that zooms. So it changes size. It changes length when you turn it. And so one side attaches to your camera body, and then the lens goes on the other side. And then when you turn it, it changes how close you can focus, which is really cool. But you have to make sure that you get one side and the other side. You have to know what you're buying, because sometimes it's lens mount, and sometimes it's camera body mount, lens mount. You got to really pay attention, or you'll buy the wrong thing and you buy it from another country and it's too expensive to ship it back and you have a paperweight. We all agree this is the least expensive, probably the least quality option. Why would you have a lens mount to lens mount? Okay, that's a good question. Irene also is asking, why would you have a lens mount to lens mount on this? I talked about that, but it was very brief. This is called a slim helicoid adapter, and it's camera mount on this side, lens mount on this side. But if you put a lens on there, it won't focus because it's not the right distance. It doesn't let you get close. So what you do is you put one adapter on your camera body on the back side, lens mount on this side, and then you have a variable size helicoid that has lens mount, and then you say, okay, I want this helicoid. Oh no, wait a minute, that's not long enough. I want the super crazy, get in there on bee butts and insides of guts of flowers. And you say, no, I want to leave this, and I just want to get a bigger one of this. That's why. It's kind of a technical, old school manual way of doing things, but that's what it does. So did that answer your question, Irene? Yes, okay, good. What are the little dots in there for? For newer type lenses, Irene says. Yeah. What does that keep? What kind of information does that transfer? Those little electronic connections. Autofocus, although
It's
the
autofocus, or if you have manual focus on your camera, you can hit that and and tell it what to go to for focus.
Yeah.
For an f-stop, I should say.
Yeah, you can change your aperture. So it's those little dots are electronic connections that transmit changes in aperture between your camera body and your lens. So for newer modern lenses, if you want to be able to put extension tubes on and still tell the lens, hey, go from f2.8 to f5.6 or f8 to make deeper depth of field, you want something that has those little connections in it. And it has to be specific to your camera brand. And what type of lens mount you have. Like if it's Canon mirrorless versus Canon APS-C versus Canon full frame. Those are all different lens mounts for Canon. So you got to make sure you get the right one. Got to buy the right thing. And if you ever try to look for this stuff and you're having trouble finding it, ask somebody in the club, and everybody will always be able to help you out, or find somebody who can help you out. You can always get these that are a plain tube, but if you have a modern lens and you get a plain tube, what's the problem? Depends if
You have to
consider
set the aperture with the lens on the camera, turn the camera off, remove it, and then put it on that.
Yeah, so if you don't have those little dots, if you just have a plain metal tube, it's full manual stick shift. Okay, I'm fussing to get you guys to answer questions. There's a Canon one that has the dots too, right? It has the little electronic contacts. So it'll talk to your camera. Your camera and your lens can talk to each other. Those are more expensive. This little guy though, with the contacts, this was only like 25, 30 bucks for this whole set of all three of those. So, and then the manual ones, the tubes are maybe 15 or 20 bucks, if that. What does this do? This should be the last thing. I can't even, do you remember? Goes between your camera. Oh, it's a reverse lens, Irene says. So one side clicks into your camera body where the opening is, and then this side, your lens screws on there, and your lens goes backwards. And remember I said camera body. So your lens looks like that. It's on the kind of the wrong way, right? And you just got to be careful. Don't drop it and scratch anything or mess that up. So got to be very careful if you do that. Has anybody in here besides me ever used vintage lenses? I don't hear anybody. It's crickets. It's all crickets.
Melanie does, but she's not on tonight.
Right. Okay, well, vintage is cheap. Vintage, Stranger Things. Even before Stranger Things, it's from the 70s, from the 60s. And some of them are like stupid clean and like there's not a speck of dust on this thing. I also discovered the delights that are Japanese camera stores. They're like, they could say a lens is in good condition and you get it and it's spotless. Like if they say it's excellent, I'm not sure anyone's ever breathed on it. So like they have very high standards for used equipment. I bought stuff that was in bargain condition and it had like one tiny scratch on it. Like really? I'll take that any day of the week. So yeah, you can find some of that stuff on eBay. We even bought a used camera body, lens, and something else for Kate's fiance. Whole setup from a Japanese camera store. And it was bubble wrapped within an inch of its life and super packed. And yeah. Okay, repeat question. Repeat question about the reverse lens, Irene? Why would you have, oh, I covered it. Okay, okay, great. All right, so I covered most of that, and you can use any of these techniques to shoot anything your little heart desires for macro. And there's a whole list of learning links like you see on the screen, all kinds of articles, cool ideas to shoot macro at home. macro portraits, the dewdrops thing, and in your shopping list, there's all kinds of goodies. Now, these may not be the exact one that you need to buy. You need to know, if you get the screw-on kind, you have to know the millimeter diameter of your lens. And if you get this reverse mount adapter to flip your lens around backwards, you have to know the filter size on the front of your lens. And we know that that is right there. It's like a 0 with a slash through it, and 77, but yours might be 55 or 62 or whatever. So you got to know that. All right. I have asked you the same questions over and over and over again, like the worst combination of mom/teacher. So that's all there. This is one I edited with my phone. Don't be afraid to take a picture with your phone and then edit it with weird Instagram filters, and I liked it. It looked cool. But you know, even using your fancy camera, I have like a weird fascination with these little ferns that curl up. They remind me of the end of a violin or cello. And so I love taking pictures of those out at Foster Park. Does anybody have anything they're into with macro that they want to share? What's their favorite macro thing to shoot?
Coffee beans.
Who said coffee beans?
Deb did.
Deb
I
did,
love
okay.
to shoot coffee beans.
Oh, plus it smells good.
Plus it smells good. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's something about the color that I really like.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite.
Flowers. I wish that I was into gardening and like knew what I was doing and had the time to take the time to do the things to make it pretty, but I don't. So I just go to the parks and enjoy their flowers. So anybody else? Danielle, Sarah, Ron, anybody? Hazel's not.
Flowers
audio.
primarily for me.
Flowers. Anybody in here like bugs? Mushrooms are cool, Irene says. Flowers from Danielle. Plants on the side of trees. Oh. So now, is Kevin your name or is that your parents' name?
Oh, you missed that. His name's
Kevin's my
Avery.
dad. My name's Avery.
Avery. Okay, sorry. I kept saying Kevin because Kevin's what I said on screen. Avery, nice to meet you. So you like plants that are on the side of trees. So like fungus or moss or like what kind of stuff? Have you ever tried to take pictures of those? Yeah. So how long have you had your camera?
I got my camera 2 years ago for Christmas.
Cool. So yeah, well, you'll have to share with us sometime. I don't want to like completely put you on the spot, but yeah, you'll have to share with us sometime, like some of the stuff that you've learned and kind of how you're progressing. So are you trying to use like some of the modes and stuff on there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Yay. Have you shared your pictures with other people?
My neighbor.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Who's your neighbor? Just like a person you know, or?
Yeah, I go to school with her.
Okay. Neighbor, like somebody else your age.
Yeah.
Not like the little old lady next door and you're like coming over, look at my pictures. Hello, Miss Emma, look at my pictures. That would be me. I would do that. Well, cool. So macro is really fun, and this went a little long. I apologize. I probably tried to put too much stuff into it. I know Irene had a question about the notebook, so I'll answer that for her. But other than that, there's nothing else that you guys want to chat about with macro. I love macro. I didn't realize how much I really loved it until just recently. I'm like, wow, look, I do have a lot of photos on my hard drives that are macro. And I love to go out to the parks. I even took like some macro photos at the zoo of like some of the flowers that are just like along the trails. I'm like, clogging up the walkway there, stopping to take pictures. Deb knows. Deb's been to the zoo with me. Deb's been to Foster Park with me.
Oh, the zoo trip was quite the adventure.
It was quite the adventure.
That's the one when my car alarm kept going off.
Yes, I remember that.
I don't have that car anymore. That's one
No.
of the reasons.
Fancy.
It is gone.
All
My
right.
family won't let me take the camera to the zoo anymore.
Oh, I used to have those problems. That's my husband didn't like going to the zoo with me because I just didn't feel like it was a real zoo trip without taking the camera. So, Danielle, do you have any of your kids? Are they interested in doing photo stuff with you?
I made my daughter use the 70D when we went on our trip. We went on a hiking trip out west.
Ooh.
So she didn't really have a choice. She just knew. So I was like, hey, this is how you do manual settings. Here's a crash course. Take pictures for me.
Right.
How old is your daughter?
23.
Oh, wow. And you said, here, put this in your hands. You're going to take some pictures.
Yep.
So what did she take pictures? Did she like try some stuff? Did she like it?
She took pictures. I don't know how excited she was about it, but she did it.
Yeah.
And I broke her in with hard pictures because one of our first places was Carlsbad Caverns, so it was all long exposure, and she didn't have a tripod, so that became a challenge.
Uh-oh.
But she got some good ones there, so that's good.
Now, from somebody who wanted to learn, Avery, did you request the camera as a gift, or did somebody just say, here, like Danielle did with her daughter, here, take some pictures? How did you end up with a camera?
My dad started teaching me when I was probably 7 or 8, and I've just always loved it.
That's awesome. So your dad is into photography too. That's so cool. So what kind of camera do you have?
I have no idea.
Okay, it's black, right? You're like, it's black, it's kind of big. Don't know. So do you have one lens, two lenses?
I have 2.
2? Oh, fancy. Like a regular one and then like a longer zoom?
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever go, like what's your favorite place to go and take pictures?
Probably Hudson Park.
Where's Hudson Park? What is that?
Portland in Jay County.
Okay, Portland.
Yeah.
South of Fort Wayne. Okay, so you're.
Yeah, I live like 3 blocks away from it, so.
Okay, so you're a member of the Fort Wayne Photographers Club from a little bit afar, not too far, and especially since we're doing everything online, like you're right in here with us. That's cool. Well, maybe like some other time that we do a workshop or something, you don't have to, but if you ever want to, we would love to see some of your pictures. But don't feel like you have to, because it's like not required or anything. So we're just a bunch of old people who are nice. So
Kris, I told you to stop saying that.
Old people. We're not that old. I'm like probably like as old as your dad or a little bit older maybe, but yeah. But yeah, we all love pictures, and I think it's so cool that you're into it. And my daughter grew up learning photography with me. That was our thing, was going to the zoo.
Yeah, my school has a photography club, but I'm only in 7th grade, and that's like the high school.
Oh, well, see, you're going to be like so pro by the time you get to the 9th grade. You're going to be like, let me tell you, you need to shoot manual because it's aperture priority business. Oh, the flower button on the dial. Oh, you get bad results when you do that. The camera makes crazy mistakes. Let me show you. Yeah, you'll be all with it. So Danielle says someday she would like to try bugs. I can do butterflies or dragonflies or something, but spiders freak me out.
I saw the guy that you showed the clip of. He does the macros of the spiders, and like, well, that's pretty cool. I don't know if.
Yeah, he had that spider just out in the open in his office. What?
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
So he could jump onto things and crawl behind things and be loose.
He has like a whole collection of spiders to take pictures of.
No. There's a photographer friend. Well, Basil has one snake that I know of at least. And then there's another guy. I don't know if he's a current actual paid member, but he's like in and around the photo club. Angel raises snakes and sells them. He has lots of snakes. Angel Campos. When
I like snakes.
I know who that is.
Yeah, when I very first met him, I sold him my Canon 135 f2 lens, and I kind of cried a little. I was very upset on the inside. And the day I met him, he was delivering snakes. And so he had plastic tubs full of snakes in the back of his vehicle. But like, you could take pictures of, your pets, and maybe your pets are creepy crawly.
I'm good with that. I'm the one that chases down a snake when I go out in the woods.
Yeah, no, not for me. No rodents and no snakes, no lizards. Mm-mm.
Had all those as pets.
So, I don't know that I could get close enough to our dogs to try macro, like something close up of their nose might be cute.
Yeah, I saw the cat. I'm like, how do you get a cat to just stay there and let you take a picture of it? Like,
well, I wonder.
Depends on the cat.
Yeah. If you had a long enough lens, you wouldn't have to be that close to it.
You have to be kind of away a little bit, but cats are fun to photograph.
Now, I get close to our dogs and they immediately turn over for belly rubs. Like, there's no getting close-ups of eyeballs or noses or feet even. They're just like, oh, you're close. You know what to do.
see, ours would be like, oh, you want a close-up of my nose? Because it's going to be on your lens. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, that'd be Bailey.
Smear across there. Avery says, you tried pictures of your grandma's dog, but he's really jumpy. Yeah.
I actually was able to get a portrait photo of Bailey.
I think I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Like a year and a half ago. It took a lot of work, and it took two of us. And she would not look at the camera. So she's like looking over my shoulder. But it's cool when they cooperate.
Yeah.
I had her in the studio and everything.
You got to take what you can get with pets and kids, dogs and kids. Just, are they kind of looking in this direction? Do they have at least one eye open? Close enough. So, all right. Well, if nobody has any other sharing things to do, anybody else?
I actually just wanted to jump in and give Avery some encouragement.
Yeah.
I started with photography around 7 years old as well. Mine was just a basic film camera back in the day, but it was a lot of fun. I followed my mom around and we did a lot of different kind of photography. I gravitated towards sports photography for the yearbook and towards like the end of junior high and around high school. So that's what I mostly did in school anyways. So then now as an adult, I've started exploring other, different parts of photography, like night photography, and now I'm kind of interested in macro. So
Sarah, did you do the yearbook thing like Avery was talking about when you were in high school?
Yes. Yep, I did.
Cool.
Yep, yearbook club.
Cool. Avery, do you have an idea of like what you would want to do with a yearbook club? Or you just want to figure it out once you get there?
Yeah, just figure it out when it comes.
Very cool.
My favorite is macro. I've tried sports pictures. I'm not very good at those, but.
Well, it helps if you know one of the guys in the photo club, Jerry, he does a lot of sports, and he was telling me it helps to, you have to know the sport so you can kind of anticipate a little bit where people are going to go and what they're trying to do so you can be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I'm a swimmer, and I've tried doing swim pictures, and like those don't even.
I don't even know how you do that.
I think those would be hard because of the indoor lighting. So you might be picking something really hard to start with, like maybe something like soccer that's usually in the day. It might be something really good to start with. Football is a lot of fun, but that usually is in the evening, so it gets really dark, and that gives you another challenge. And then pretty
Baseball,
much,
soccer.
yeah, I would say those would be easy ones to start with because they're usually like daytime sports. Anything indoors like basketball, volleyball, those are going to be a little bit harder, okay? So just keep that in mind because you're going to have to really increase the ISO when you're indoors and watch your shutter speed, okay?
That's really good advice. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, that I can't tell you how cool it is to have somebody younger involved in the club. Really, really cool. We're all very, very glad to have you here. So,
yeah.
All right.
And Avery, I'm slightly jealous of you because I wish I knew about the photo club when I was your age. So we're happy to have you, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, you have
I wouldn't have known about it if it weren't for my dad. He found it on Facebook and.
Oh wow! Now, was that recent? He found it on Facebook, and you were like, "I'm on it. I'm doing it."
Yeah, I did the scholarship thing this year around Christmas time. So.
Aw, I love that. Very cool. Okay, well, I did create, let me look here. There's an event page on, this is Fort Wayne Photographers Club, and this is the one on Facebook that has, in parentheses, members page. So these are all the official members. And there's events, and here is the page for tonight's workshop. So if you click on it, you can add a post. And so if you go to events, let me go back again. So here's all those tabs across the top on our group. If you go to events and you click on the macro workshop, you can add a post on here and we can all talk about just stuff that relates to macro. So if you want to share a picture, I can share a couple of mine on here, and we could just discuss things related to macro, ideas that you have or things that you tried, whether it worked or not, if you want. So this is a way to keep it just talking about the things that we were doing tonight, and you just click add a post. So again, you don't have to, but if you want to, for anybody, you're welcome. So, or just out in the open for everybody under discussion here. This is just what everybody sees. But if you want it to just be confined to talking about macro, you can go under the event page and talk about that. So I need to answer Irene's question real quick about notebooks because I told her I'd put it off toward the very, very end. But if anybody else has questions, you're welcome to ask them. But other than that, I'm just going to answer Irene's question about the funky notebook that I really like. No? Okay, well, take off as you will. Thank you very much for everybody being here tonight, and I will get the video posted, and that is going to be under media, and you go, so here's the tab media, and then you go to albums, and so they're organized. So here is workshop recordings, so it'll be under here. So you can click on any of these and see previous workshops. And I'm currently teaching a free Lightroom class on Thursday nights from 7 to 9 p.m. If anybody wants to jump in on that, we've had 2 classes so far, and you can get caught up super easy. So you're welcome to do that if you'd like. So, all right. Well, thank you for being here. I'm going to answer Irene's question, and if anybody takes off, give me a wave. Irene, this is the notebook. And this is, it's called a traveler's notebook. And so it's kind of unique that it has a leather cover and then it has an elastic string thingy there. We're losing somebody there. And then inside it has multiple skinny notebooks that are like 1/4 of an inch thick, maybe. And all of those are bound together. These little tabs down here are elastic pieces that go from the top, and they go through the middle of that insert, and they come down here and clip in. So you can have 3 or 4 separate notebooks, and I really like it because you can get a notebook insert that's a calendar. You can get a notebook insert that has lines in it, and then you can get one that's just blank. So I could have separate little notebooks inside there for different things that I want to do. So one could be a calendar to write down things, and one could be dedicated to photo stuff, ideas, a park that I want to visit, a technique I want to try, or the name of a YouTube channel I find, and I don't want it to get lost in all the other YouTube crazy that I have going on. I want to remember to go back and look at more of their videos and watch. I'm a write things down person, and I remember better if I write things down. And when I'm learning something, if I take some notes or I doodle and draw concepts, I remember them better. So I love this type of notebook. You can get like a cheapy version of it on Amazon, and then I have like this stationery store that I buy my, Irene says she's the same, yeah. I love to write stuff down. I just remember it so much better when I write it down. So it could be a spiral bound notebook. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but I like this one because it's almost like having it tabbed out, but when I have spiral bound notebooks as an adult, I don't really have a system to keep track of those, like a backpack, like a student does, like Avery maybe. So as an adult, I find that I lose them, which is maybe kind of bad. I lose track of them, and I start writing too many different things, and they're a little bit bigger than I can carry in my purse. I don't carry a backpack every day. So I needed something a little bit smaller that would fit in a purse. And so they come in more sizes than this, but the 2 most popular are the regular size and Passport named after passport size. So Passport size is like the size of, kind of like your hand. A little passport booklet is about the size of your hand. That feels a little small to me to write in. It's very short to try to write things out in. So I like the longer size, and I carry a big old mom purse anyway. It's got like everything in it. Extra charger thing for my phone, an extra charger for my phone, sunglasses, all kinds of hand sanitizer. It's a mom purse. So, oh, you have one of your tree plant pictures. Yes, yes, yes. I would love to see your tree plant picture. Avery's going to show us a picture. So I really like these notebooks. It's called a traveler's notebook. And you can get different colors for the cover, and I don't know. I just really dig it. I like that system. Okay, show us your tree plant picture.
Got the reflection in the frame.
Yeah, got the reflection. You printed a picture and framed it? Wow. I hope you go to school virtual and we're not keeping you up past your bedtime and your parents are like, oh my goodness.
School's canceled already for tomorrow.
School's canceled. All right. Woo, party. Okay. Oh, it's like a pink flower on the side of a tree. Yeah?
Yeah, this was in our backyard.
That's beautiful.
I'm blurry, but
Yeah.
I know I can see it. Oh, that's really cool. And you printed it. Shocking. An actual printed photo. Someone your age, they usually have like everything on a phone or whatever, and they like never print
I print
anything.
out all my pictures. After a while, I print out them all.
We like you. We already liked you, but we really like you. That's awesome. That's cool. So what do you keep them in if you print all these pictures?
Some of them I have framed. I think I have 4 or 5 of the macro ones I've done, and then I have little book things that I keep them in.
I love that.
I love it too. That's cool. See, you're better than me with that. And I've been doing professional photography, like for hire for other people for like 20 years. And you're better about printing your personal pictures than I am. So good for you. I think I get too busy sometimes and I don't think about doing it, and I should. I give out a lot of pictures for Christmas. Maybe that saves me. So lots of, they were always like people pictures. I took people pictures of family members and stuff, and then I print them out and give them a picture of themselves, their family or whatever for Christmas. But just lately I started giving out my personal pictures, like artsy fartsy stuff that I did. So have you ever given a picture as a gift?
I mean, not like with my camera. Like, I've had pictures that my dad's taken, like with me and my cousins, and I give them to him for like their graduation gift, but nothing with my good camera.
The good camera.
My
Okay.
It's a phone picture.
It feels a little personal to give a picture, like an artsy one that you did, like your flower on the side of the tree picture, and to like frame that and give it to somebody. But it's really cool when you do, and they really like it. So I am not quite 50 yet. I know, like I keep saying old, right? And Deb's gonna yell at me, don't say old. We're not old. But
only because I'm older than you, so you just have to stop.
And my mom is in her 70s, but she loves irises. She has irises in her garden. And so I thought if I took a really nice picture of an iris, that would be a cool Mother's Day gift for her, I think. Because she's in her 70s. She has everything.
That would be perfect.
Buy her? So,
my mom is a big scrapbooker, so it's whatever pictures she can find. She takes pictures everywhere, no matter what.
So your mom takes pictures too?
No, like, not like I do, not like me and my dad do, but she takes pictures everywhere we go, even if it's with her phone. Sometimes she uses my dad's camera, but
yeah. Does she use it? Like, is she into it? Like, she knows how to work the camera too, or she's just like, just set it up for me, I want to take a picture?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. Hey, at least she's taking pictures. I was into scrapbooking too.
Yeah, my mom and my grandma and my aunts are all big scrapbookers.
Yeah, so there's all kind of embarrassing pictures of you from when you were little.
Yeah.
My daughter too.
She found a picture from when I was 3, and me and my cousin dressed up like had a dress up party, and it was weird. It was just weird.
Yeah, Irene took off but she said goodnight. So yeah, I would stay here and keep talking, and like it would be so rude, and I would keep talking super duper late to everybody, but because I love talking to everybody from the photo club, but I don't want you to feel like you have to stick around and chat. But I probably tried to cover too much stuff tonight because I kept looking and I was like, oh, there's all this. What about this? What about lighting? What about this? Well, you could buy one of these, but you don't have to buy one. You can make it cheap. So there's a lot that's in there. When you get the PDF, you'll be able to look back through some things and take it a little bit slower and go through everything that was on there. So, all right. I'm a chatty person, and so if I don't call it quits, I will keep talking. And it'll be crazy. So I greatly enjoy all of you and have a good time. And I learned my lesson on trying to take on too much. There was like twice as many things on here as what we could have covered in the time. So I'll slim it down next time. So, but thank you guys for all being here. I'm going to end everything in the meeting because I covered Irene's question about the notebook. Use any old notebook you want, but think about writing stuff down. And sometimes you have a question, and by the time you're around people to ask it, you forgot what the question was. Write down your questions. That's a good tip for you, Avery. Write down your questions, and we'll be happy to help if we can. So, all right, well, I'm going to click
Thanks, Kris.
stop share it in.
Thank you, Kris.
Well, thank you guys for being here and for putting up with my crazy. I hope it wasn't too disjointed. And Avery doesn't know this, I was sick like all through January with coronavirus. It was gross. So I'm feeling much better now, but ugh, it was hard to get anything done. So I hope that I didn't sound like a crazy person tonight trying to get through everything. So, all right. As soon as I can dig through here and find the end meeting button, we're gonna click off. So I will see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.